Welcome to this hearing for the Committee's inquiry into modern slavery risks faced by temporary migrant workers in rural and regional New South Wales. I acknowledge the Gumbaynggirr people, the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing culture and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name is Dr. Joe McGurr and I am Chair of the Committee. Now I ask everyone in the room to please turn their mobile phones to silent. Our parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses in relation to the evidence they give today. However, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of the hearing, and I urge witnesses to be careful about making comments to the media or to others after completing their evidence. In addition, the Legislative Council has adopted rules to provide procedural fairness for inquiry participants, and I encourage committee members and witnesses to be mindful of these procedures. And now to each of the witnesses, welcome and thank you for making time to give evidence today. Could each witness, starting from my left, so with yourself, Ms. Onett, please state your name and position, title, and swear either an oath or an affirmation.
Good morning. My name is Biba Honett. I'm the Migrant and Settlement Manager for the St Vincent de Paul Society New South Wales. I manage North Coast Settlement Service. And I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Honett. Mr. Fryer.
Good morning. My name is Giles Fryer. I'm a Senior Solicitor at Legal Aid New South Wales, and I give an affirmation. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thanks, Mr. Fryer. Mr. Blaxland.
Good morning. My name's James Blaxland. I'm also a Senior Solicitor for the Workplace Rights Service at Legal Aid. And I solemnly and sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thanks, Mr. Blaxland. Would either of your two organisations like to make a brief opening statement? You would, Mr. Fryer. Ms. Onett, would you like to make a brief opening statement?
Yes, please.
Okay. But can I just ask you to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes because we're keen to explore the evidence. So I'll start with yourself, Ms. Onett.
Yeah, sure. So I manage a settlement service in northern New South Wales that covers the Nambucca Valley up to the Queensland border and inland to the Great Dividing Range. It's a region which includes towns where temporary migrant workers are employed in local meatworks and the agricultural sector. And we're funded to assist refugees and other vulnerable migrants. We provide casework, referrals to mainstream services and education about Australian culture, laws, systems and their rights. We work closely with a lot of other organisations, health, women's refuges, legal services, and because we are a migrant-specific service operating in a regional area where there are limited services, we are often contacted regarding both general and more specific welfare concerns for temporary migrant workers, even when, or particularly when, they're not eligible for our or other assistance. I speak to a lot of these workers, and I hope that we have quite a few of them speaking today. But when major local employers are known to apply punitive measures to an entire ethnic group if one person from their community as much as questions an unfair condition on the job, I'm unsurprised that the workers I've contacted have been unwilling to speak today. I just want to, today my intention is to keep front and centre, and I hope this isn't too trite, that these are people at the end of the day. We seem to treat them as commodities, but they're human beings doing work that's much needed in our communities. And when the system works, they're paid good money compared with what they might earn in their local economies, and we can all feel good about that. When it doesn't work, local communities are stepping in to provide the much needed basic welfare and other supports. And for the workers, their costs here can be really high. It's not just the increased rents and inflated food, transport and utility costs, but the months and sometimes years away from their families, communities, and often their children, while they're treated as outsiders and kept at arm's length from our communities in Australia.
Thank you. Mr. Fryer.
Legal Aid New South Wales is an independent statutory body established under the Legal Aid Commission Act. We deliver legal services across New South Wales through a statewide network of over 26 offices. They range through criminal, family and civil law. Our services range from legal information, advice, through to extensive suite of litigation services. We also partner with private lawyers who are funded by Legal Aid to represent legally aided clients. Employment law is the third most common civil law matter type that Legal Aid sees in New South Wales. All of that is done in-house through our team, which is called the Workplace Rights Service, a specialist statewide service within our civil law division. We essentially help workers enforce their rights under state and federal workplace laws. In the last financial year, we provided nearly 4,000 employment and discrimination law services to workers in New South Wales, including advice and representation. This extends across wages and entitlements claims, unfair contracts, unfair and unlawful termination, workplace discrimination and sexual harassment. This year, calendar year, our team recovered over $1.2 million in settlements and determined outcomes for our clients. Many of our clients are migrant workers in regional areas, including here in the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Responding to demand and because we've obtained ongoing funding through the National Legal Assistance Partnership, we've nearly doubled our team. We now have 10 permanent solicitors, and we've been able to base those solicitors in what we consider are regional hotspots, including here in Coffs Harbour and down in the Riverina in your electorate in Wagga Wagga, Mr Chair. And also, despite this and despite our awareness that this is a hotspot, we know we're seeing less people than we should be. And that's because of, a lot of the concerns which Ms Honnett raised about coming forward to seek help. So we hear those stories and we're happy to share some of those stories today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fryer. I'll start the questioning. To you, Ms Honnett, you said that the system can be good, can work well, something indeed we should be perhaps even proud of in some sense. But you clearly said that it doesn't work in some situations. I'm just wondering if you could expand on what you mean by it doesn't work and perhaps your observations about why it doesn't work or what happens that the system, the complex system that's set up for regulation and so on, people fall outside of that.
Yes. So over the past 2.5 years, since my first referral of a group of 79 very unhappy blueberry picking Pacific Australia labour mobility workers, I've visited many substandard employer-provided accommodations where overcrowding and inadequate protection from the elements in summer and winter are common. Dirt floors, tarpaulin doors and walls. Workers have told me about unfair working conditions, curfews and restricted freedom of movement, withholding of pay slips, visas and their passports, and consistently less pay than they were promised when they were recruited back home. And this is just from workers within Palm. From the workers that I speak to who have disengaged from the program and thus become undocumented, the situation's often far worse once they enter the informal labour arrangements that I'm learning there's no shortage of in this region. So their vulnerability increases enormously once they don't have the protection of a scheme that still is not working for everybody.
Can I just, there's quite a number of aspects of that answer that I think we'll probably want to explore. The first one for me is just to come back to the fact that you said, you've indicated that for people who are actually on the scheme, presumably with approved employers, you've still witnessed substandard conditions and issues with pay and their treatment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that one of the reasons people leave the scheme?
That's my understanding from the conversations that I've had with workers. When it becomes untenable for them to stay, they disengage.
Mr. Fry, have you got any comment to make on that observation?
I think the latest statistics are approximately 7,000 people have disengaged from the PALM scheme. There are a multitude of reasons why that occurs, but if we're looking at some of the structural issues, perhaps the strictness that's applied to the PALM scheme, if it was to be contrasted, say, with the working holiday maker scheme, where in the PALM scheme you're really wedded to one employer, and it's very difficult to seek re-engagement through the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations to engage with a new approved employer. That can make it very difficult where circumstances are such that a person doesn't want to continue in that workplace, whether it's because of experiences of underpayment or excessive deductions, sexual harassment, even unfair dismissal where they've had to leave. It still becomes difficult. If we contrast this over to the working holiday maker scheme, there's simply hardly any regulation about who can be an employer to sign off on, for example, a person's 88 days farm working, which a lot of people are doing up in this region. So there's one, perhaps too much regulation or too strict a process in the cohort, which is farm workers, and then not enough in the working holiday maker scheme.
Can I just clarify, before passing to the next question, just clarify that despite that strict regulation, and we've heard of regular inspections, and we've heard employers complaining about the strictness and expense of being an approved employer and what they have to meet, you're actually saying that you've met and had dealings with workers who are still in substandard conditions and whose treatment is such that that is a factor in them leaving the scheme.
That's correct, yes. And if you look at the list of who are approved employers in New South Wales, there's a large proportion of those are labour hire companies. And some of those labour hire companies are, of course, doing the right thing, but there are others that are providing situations where workers can end up either owing money or otherwise not earning enough money each week. And that's because the PALM scheme obviously operates a bit differently to usual work visas and work generally in Australia, where there's a larger class of deductions that can be taken from their pay. And under the PALM deed and guidelines, you know, they're really left with not much in their pocket at the end of a full working week. And so because of that and the fact that there is a bit of idle time, especially in harvest-based industries like horticulture, where there isn't work to provide them, you know, they're not able sometimes to get their full hours each week. So there's a requirement in the PALM deed of 120 hours over a 4-week period. So that can mean there's some slack time as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'll pass to you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today. I wanted to touch in on, I guess, when things go bad, either where people are exploited or indeed they have serious health needs or the need for crisis accommodation when inappropriate housing is identified, when they need visa support because they have disengaged. I wonder if you could all speak briefly to, I guess, what is funded and where the gaps are. So I guess, you know, what access do non-citizens have to the services in the area? What restrictions are there in terms of accessing domestic and family violence services, crisis accommodation, healthcare, support, access for education for kids, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I'm keen to hear what, I guess, for people who are part of formal working schemes, but also then, because obviously even if you're doing well and have a great employer, you still need to go to the doctor occasionally or get sick, versus the ones that are in probably much more risky situations. But Ms. Honnett, do you want to start and then we can just go through? Yeah.
So for workers within the scheme, I'll talk about PALM because that is the group that I see most of. There are still barriers to accessing things like healthcare because they're required to pay upfront for any health needs and then be reimbursed by the insurance that they hold compulsory through the program. So that may be, you know, full cost, no Medicare subsidy. It sometimes is $600 to attend the emergency department, for example. I've seen people skip antenatal care because it's too expensive for them to pay up front. In terms of accommodation, if they have a visa, they are entitled to stay in a refuge, access women's health services, access domestic and family violence services. Most services are available to them on a limited basis. At the point of disengagement, that all ceases, and it's very, very difficult to get assistance for people in need, other than through charitable individuals and usually community volunteer groups who fundraise and spend their own money to provide food vouchers and payments for emergency accommodation.
Thank you. Did you want to comment, Mr. Blacksland or Mr. Fryer?
Sure. From a legal standpoint, as Mr. Fryer said, a lot of these employers, particularly in the PALM scheme, but also in the working holiday makers, are labour hire. And with almost zero regulation in New South Wales for labour hire employers, they can essentially be a $10 company with no assets. We've seen examples of a labour hire company whose registered address is in fact the backpacker hostel, and their director is overseas. And so bringing an action, a legal action for recovery of wages or anything against a company like that is it's fruitless. There's no money, there's no assets. It's often difficult to even serve documents on a company like that. And the Fair Entitlements Guarantee that covers the rest of us in circumstances where, a company is insolvent or an employer is insolvent doesn't apply to farm workers and so forth. So sometimes they are underpaid deliberately and have no way of getting those wages repaid. Other services like victim services don't apply. I think probably one, and this is perhaps going off on a little bit of a tangent, but one of the main issues we see is the lack of knowledge as well. There is not a lot of translation services, particularly in these rural areas. There's not a lot of material in the languages in which these workers speak, and they simply do not know what their rights are. There is, as Ms. Honnett said, a lot of fear for coming forward and a lot of mistrust of government services, but there's also just simply a lack of knowledge and a lack of resources available to them. They wouldn't know what they can do in those circumstances in the first place, and that's something I think that could certainly be improved with very little resources.
Thank you. We might move to...
Can I just follow up and just ask, and I'm happy to take it on notice, it'd be really great to know if Legal Aid or Vinnie's have any data or whether you get data on where people are placed and migrant workers are placed, because we've heard from councils that okay.
I've asked.
Okay.
I'm trying.
Because the local councils we know don't get that information, and I just wasn't sure whether or not you may have any idea of the scale or size of the populations you're trying to serve.
Unfortunately, it's very closed to us, and it would be helpful for some of the preventative work that we do if we did know.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll pass to you, Dr. Kane.
Thank you. And I wonder if I could just take up where you left off with regards to the labour hire. One of the questions I had is, do you, and this goes to all of you, have you engaged directly, say, with the growers? And is there anything equivalent to sort of accessorial liability? Like, how can we, it's not uncommon in other industries for the contracting chain to be complex, for phoenixing down the chain, but you can then pursue others in that chain who should have responsibility. Is that an option? Do you do that? How does that work in terms of making the growers are ultimately responsible for what's happening on their farms, even if they feel like they're contracting that responsibility out to a labour hire company?
If we're focusing on the Fair Work Act, Section 550 of the Act is a common accessorial liability provision which we rely on in claims against directors of companies, for example, where they're involved in the contraventions of the company. it becomes slightly more complicated in the labour hire context. It's certainly not impossible to do. I'm aware that industry is aware of this as an abstract issue. It's I think quite difficult if you start back from the beginning of how a person becomes engaged. So take, for example, a working holiday maker who answers simply a post in Mandarin or in a language on a Facebook group saying come and pick berries in Nambucca or in Coffs Harbour. By the time they've started working, even by the time they've received their pay, they're still quite unsure what the entity is that they're working for, that they're employed by. And when they go onto the site where the grower is, where the farm is, they might only be given GPS coordinates to put in their phone in order to how to get there in the labour hire company provided car. So there's very little knowledge of who it is who's the grower, who is even the employer in that tripartite relationship. For them to then later on, after they've been underpaid or had something occur to them, to seek a legal claim, it's very difficult, like Mr. Blaxland was saying, to identify the potential respondents, to serve documents. They'll only know the grower by their first name. They might only see them 1 or 2 times. So perhaps that's a more unusual example. I wouldn't say it's uncommon. That's certainly what our clients tell us. Otherwise, I certainly think that's an area where potential test case litigation and advocacy can make some headway. But as yet, it is complicated to do that.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to, I'm Linda Volz, I'm the member for Auburn. I want to come at you at a different angle. As a member for Auburn, I've got about 1,000 refugees with no means of support. They're all being picked up by the community. 80% of my electorate speak a language other than English. The stories in your submission, they're not uncommon. They're stories I get every single day in my electorate. So you say there's one Palm case study here. Is it possible to actually you say there's many working in regional areas, but I would have thought this is something that you've dealt with day to day, given the situation in my electorate, particularly with safe haven visas in the past and a whole range of things, that it is a statewide rather than a regional problem. So other than the working holiday visas, which you said is less regulated, but the Palm aren't. Well, one of your case studies is a working visa person, so that's not the problem. The problem is where employers are exploiting peoples, and particularly people that are from migrant communities, whether they've got visas, not got visas, a whole range of things. What's the mechanism here that deals with the universal problem, particularly in my electorate, but also in regional areas, that goes to the heart of this? Because these are employment conditions that are usually regulated by either a New South Wales government department or a federal government department.
That's a very good question, and I agree that the issue is not confined to regional or rural parts of New South Wales. It's statewide, and our service certainly sees the majority of clients who are subject to exploitation on a form of temporary visa in our metropolitan areas. If we think of perhaps dividing the types of clients we see into 4 groups, whether it's working holiday makers, palm workers, then we have different types of visas that have work conditions. So say, for example, skilled visas and student visas, and types of bridging visas that allow it. And then the last group being people who don't actually have a right to work in Australia, whether they are on a visa but it doesn't have a condition to work, or they don't have any visa, a current visa at all. People across that spectrum obviously have different ways that they wish to engage in seeking out help, in ways that they're forced to continue providing for themselves by undertaking cash-in-hand work or other things because they're in breach of some of their conditions of their visa. Why we're focusing on palm workers and working holiday makers is because under the work requirement rule, a work specification rule for working holiday makers, and under the palm scheme, they're required to work in regional areas. So because that's the focus of this committee, we're obviously focusing on those groups. But we recognise, of course, that there are people on skilled visas and student visas. There are people without any visa at all who are here in Coffs Harbour right now picking fruit and being exploited. Equally, there are people from those subclasses who are working in convenience stores in Sydney right now being exploited as well. In terms of the mechanisms that are necessary to protect all of those workers, there are some things at the federal level in terms of regulating some of the conditions and rules around how people work, where they work and for how long in the different visa subclasses that need to be fixed because they form parts of almost indentured servitude, needing to be wedded to an employer rather than perhaps an industry. So there's ways that they can be fixed. And then generally, you know, the system can work well, but it's very difficult when there's no regulation of labour hire companies. Time and again, they are seen as a very common employer of migrant workers across all industries. And New South Wales remains one of the few states without labour hire regulation. Obviously, that's currently a national issue. But there have been many calls, including from the New South Wales Anti-Slavery Commissioner, the Australian Anti-Slavery Commissioner, that New South Wales needs urgent reform in that space.
Thank you. I might, if it...
Can I have a very quick follow-up?
Yes.
I just wondered, approved employers, I mean, that seems to be a loophole or a gap that, you know, you can drive a truck through. You're seeing approved employers being labour hire companies that are clearly not decent employers doing the wrong thing. So something's going wrong with how we approve employers, isn't it?
Yes.
I can't speak to personal experience of an improved employer. More so labour hire companies in the working holiday maker space. As Mr. Blaxland was saying, examples where, because of how easy it is to set up a company and not being subject to any licensing arrangements for a labour hire company in New South Wales, it can quite literally be registered to a false address.
But labour hire companies can be the approved employer.
They can, but the approved employer scheme has quite a lot of requirements to become approved employer. I would say perhaps some of the shortcomings are that, you know, considerations will be in New South Wales if they have certification under an industry accredited body like Fair Farms or SEDEX or things like that in the horticulture sector. And that's potentially a compliance issue throughout the supply chain because the supermarkets too rely on those industry accreditation bodies. And I think there's been research that does suggest that self-accreditation has some shortcomings.
Just to clarify that point, though, I also thought, Mr. Blaxland, you said earlier that there were labour hire firms that were approved employers, and they may be problematic in terms of standards. Could you just clarify that? I mean, I accept the point about unregulated labour hire firms. I get that, but you know, we've heard from employers that becoming an approved employer is quite difficult. It's stringent. It's monitored by the Commonwealth. So, you seem to suggest that labour hire firms may be able to get away through that, but perhaps you could clarify that.
Look, to be honest, we do, and like Mr. Fryer said earlier, we do see far fewer palm workers coming through our doors than we know are having issues through our community engagement people. The labour hire in this space that we see or have seen are mostly in the working holiday makers, whether they be simply advertising on Facebook pages and things like that for workers. And I think, again, as Ms. Honnett said, there are success stories in this space, absolutely. But there are also some significant issues in the palm worker scheme. I couldn't say with any great detail or with any assurity that the labour hire workers in the palm scheme I'll repeat that. I could not say with any assurity that the labour hire employers within the palm scheme are not doing the right thing because of any national scheme of picking them out.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. McDonald, it's your turn. Sorry, we've kept you waiting.
I wanted to turn to in your submission you had about migrant worker centres, and in you had welcome committees. I was just wondering, because you said a lot of the time workers don't know the rules, how would you see, say, the migrant worker centre or the welcoming committee provide an awareness to workers so that the things that have been happening don't happen? How would it look like, or what would it look like in practical terms, though, the migrant worker centre or the welcoming committee, so that workers coming in can be made aware of the barriers and things that they should be aware of, or actually shouldn't be aware of, but are happening.
Yep. If it were, well, I can see it working either one of two ways. Either a migrant worker centre that I would have a lawyer, a social worker,
Yep.
and then bilingual or multilingual workers who can communicate directly with workers who are able to do what we do in the program, the settlement program that I run, which is provide education on host culture, general legal advice. You have a driver's license. It's great that you have an international license. That only lasts 6 months, and then you need to renew it and get a local license. Otherwise, they get fines. That's one of the major reasons that people come into us.
Yeah.
It's because they don't know that is a requirement. From then, it often snowballs, and their fines get bigger and bigger until they become unpayable for them. So I think a designated migrant worker centre in regional areas would be wonderful. Alternatively, include palm workers and other migrant workers, temporary migrant workers, in a program like the one that I run in northern New South Wales, which is federally funded to provide settlement, engagement and transition support. So that covers all of the referrals and community education, local information, host culture, connection to your local community. I think that is what is missing in the sort of orientation for these workers, is they're kept separate from our local communities. I 3 years ago was receiving warnings saying, just to let everybody know, can you circulate in your networks that it's migrant worker season, new workers have arrived, you may see an increase in certain types of crime and street harassment. This is not what I've experienced at all. There's that othering that is occurring with these workers that...
So who was providing?
Oh, I mean, it was an email from a service provider. That was the warning that they had to share in the community. I could find it. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, if we're focusing on palm workers again, the welcoming committees, I mean, I understand DFAT's responsible for pre-departure briefings, and then it becomes Department of Duer's responsibility to do sort of inductions when they're here. That involves New South Wales Police. It has involved unions to an extent. We see a space, for organisations like Legal Aid to provide plain language legal information, which we provide commonly through our community legal education. That's sometimes also done, obviously, in targeted community languages. We translate our written documents and publications as well. Lots of this extra work, which is really vital beyond the sort of legal work and support, often is unfunded, particularly in regional areas. And I know Ms Hunt can speak to that, about the work she does that's outside of core funding. So in terms of, things that can be done, we're talking a lot of things at the federal level. At the state level, there is, I think, room for additional funding, which of course Legal Aid would always say, but it's in relation to that extra work of building relationships of trust in regional areas and having the resources necessary, because this is not a temporary stream of workers coming to the regions. This is an increasing amount of people, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So if we can create welcoming committees and other ongoing forms of engagement, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah. Can I just ask
Yes,
like
yes.
a follow-up? And because you mentioned, that an email goes out saying, be aware of this. Instead of an email like that, what training or resources should be going out into the rural communities to make aware that, hey, we've got some wonderful people who are coming in, and these are their cultures, rather than warning them that, lock up whatever it is they're doing. How can we flip that?
Well, there needs to be an acknowledgement of the reciprocity of this sort of work. These workers are doing work that often Australians aren't interested in doing. So they're providing a service to us. We're all benefiting from that. They actually deserve to be welcomed into communities, and that starts with letting service providers know where they are working, where they are based, where they are accommodated, and allowing us to bring them to welcome events, include them in faith-based activities if that's their want. It's a whole of community responsibility. And I think the communities that I have known who have included workers in their activities have said nothing but positive things.
Can I just ask a quick
Yes.
follow-up? Sorry, just on the Migrant Workers Centre, have you guys had any contact with the newly established Migrant Workers Centre that's been set up, that's been established through the Unions New South Wales?
Not yet.
Yeah, we've been in touch with Unions New South Wales. Obviously, the funding was last year, $6.5 million over a 4-year period. My understanding is it's due to open early next year, 2026. It's administered through Department of Communities and Justice, which Legal Aid also is. So we're very interested to understand how we can work together, given that we already have solicitors and services in a lot of the high priority regional areas.
In particular to bilingual documentation, pamphlets, information going out. Have you had any discussions with them regarding that?
Yes, just preliminary discussions. My understanding is their focus is on also engaging specialist solicitors, social workers who are themselves or have been migrant workers who are multilingual. We have long experience in terms of hiring in regional and remote parts of New South Wales. That's quite difficult, but I think it's a very good ambition to have to do that.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question, starting with yourself, Ms. Hornet, and it's about disengaged workers. So I think, as you've pointed out, that's a particularly vulnerable group. They're almost stateless and can easily be exploited. You highlighted some difficulties with the PALM scheme that might lead to people to consider leaving it. And clearly we've heard that there's a lack of information and issues with language, which will also confuse people. I'm just wondering, though, are there other factors that lead to people disengaging? And in particular, are people poached off the scheme? Are people actually approached, do you think, and offered alternative visas? Have you, and yourself, Mr. Fryer, Mr. Blackson, have you had any heard of that happening or aware of any of that?
I haven't heard of poaching. I would say the disengaged workers that I have spoken with and worked with have disengaged because of working conditions, living conditions that were not what they expected when they came onto the program. They've been paid less, they've been mistreated in the workplace, and it hasn't been what they have signed up for. And then there may be an element of, I know somebody who is working in a different state or territory whose experience is better than mine. And I will always try to assist them to go through the department and move employers, but that is such a long process. I haven't had any success with it, and in that interim period, they leave and they become disengaged.
Are you able just to briefly describe your experience of helping people try and go through the official channel to raise a concern?
It involves spending a long time on the phone, which they often can't do. It's not suitable for me to do it. I approach. There is a phone line that they can call to register and request. And most of the time, these workers are being threatened that if they don't change a certain behaviour or perform in a certain way, they're going home tomorrow. So they don't have that time to spend half an hour or 45 minutes or 2 hours waiting to talk to somebody who then says, okay, well, now we've got your report, we'll see what we can do. The threat is that they're leaving tomorrow, and they've seen that happen to their friends. So they just pack up and leave.
Thank you.
We haven't really gotten much further in the process.
No, that's actually very helpful. Thank you. Mr. Fry, did you want to make a comment?
Just 2 weeks ago, I've been involved assisting a palm worker through the grievance process, so I can speak to that. Certainly it's very complicated. So in the example where a person who's in the palm scheme is dismissed from their employment, it's very common that the employer will buy them a ticket out of the country the very next day or within that week. If that person wants to challenge their dismissal through by way, let's say, of an unfair dismissal claim, which is their right to do, by them remaining in Australia, they are in breach of their visa. Condition 8611 requires them to remain employed by their approved employer, and every day they're not employed, they're in breach of their visa. That's an offence that can be subject of cancellation notice by Department of Home Affairs. To me, there's a lot of departments involved when this occurs, because Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, Department of Home Affairs need to speak to one another. This is where this pilot of the workplace justice visa comes in, but because a person hasn't yet had their visa cancelled, they're not eligible to apply for a workplace justice visa. You can only do that within 28 days on either side. So the strengthening reporting protections pathway, the other side, is possible, but there are other grounds on which Department of Home Affairs can cancel palm visas. And so it's a real minefield as a lawyer to give advice to a very vulnerable client, often through an interpreter, because you can't give them any certainty whatsoever. You can't say to them, it's going to take you 5 months to see through to your unfair dismissal. I think you have a strong claim, but you might not be here by the end of that. And in the meantime, it's illegal for you to perform any paid work to financially sustain yourself to stay in Australia. They still have rent to pay. They, of course, have bills, and they have to, as a condition of their visa, maintain private health insurance. So back to your previous question, I think it's important in those moments where people do disengage, there are many reasons why they do, mistreatment. The slack time, the idle time, is a really important thing too, and this is why it was disappointing that the federal government didn't move to put the minimum hours per week and kept it at the 4-week 120 hours. And that's because if a person is still having deducted from their weekly wages $180 for a bed, transport, food, but they're not making enough money, they're in debt. That's debt bondage, so they have to pay their way out of that situation. And if they're offered cash work elsewhere, but they have no work going on because the harvest is over, or their labour hire company hasn't moved them yet from Coffs down to the Riverina for the new harvest, it's hard to say no in those circumstances. So one thing I also wanted to touch on outside of Palm is here there's a very active community, a society that you'll hear from some of their members later on today, the Coffs Coast Multicultural Society. When we meet with them, they tell us about the dozens of different languages and ethnic groups that are present here working in the Coffs Harbour region. There are Burmese, there's people from Nepal, Indonesia, there are people from many, many countries. So there's also a large contingent, like I was saying before, of people who are the subject of migration fraud or deception. So they're brought to Australia, either promise that they have work rights on the visa they've paid for, or on a tourist visa to then apply for a protection visa. So that's a I would say, a missing group of people who are very important to talk about in this conversation. So obviously the PALM scheme is very regulated, working holiday makers less so, but then there's another huge group of people who are at most risk of exploitation, disengaged workers, but also workers on other forms of visas or no visa at all.
Or no visa at all,
Who
yeah.
we really don't see hardly ever at legal aid, and for understandable reasons. They're very scared to come forward. And so, you know, our work is in trying to increase community engagement and build relationships of trust and that legal training so that these people, one, understand their rights, and then two, know where they can go to find out what they can do about it.
Okay, thank you very much. We're just at time now. Are there any questions on notice that people
I just
would like
wanted to flag, and I'll follow up with some supplementary questions, but one of the things that we haven't touched on is the family accompanying pilot that is occurring now. And I guess I'd just be really interested to know, we're not going to have time to touch on it, but it hasn't come up, just in relation to the risks to partners and children when we're looking at potential vulnerabilities of the workers that are engaged in their visas, if there was to be a breakdown in those relationships or indeed in the relationship between the employer and the worker, how that is playing out and any insights you can provide. So I'm happy to follow up with some supplementary
you.
questions, Chair, but I'm just really concerned we haven't touched on that at all, and that's a second level of vulnerability that I think arises.
So under my program, if I can just answer really quickly, dependents of palm workers are actually eligible for our assistance. That means we can help them with housing, health, welfare, any other requests that they do have. However, we're not actually seeing them in this region, and I suspect it's because accommodation is so scarce and so expensive. So it hasn't come up yet.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
So
Thanks very much.
that'll be a supplementary
Yeah.
question. Okay, can I thank you all for your evidence? The Secretariat will contact you in relation to any questions on notice, and I presume you'll be happy to provide answers for those. And at that point, we might conclude the first session of today's hearing. I just want to thank you all for making time. I think it's been a very valuable session, and we might end the session there.
Thank you.
session of our inquiry into temporary migrant workers in rural and regional New South Wales. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome our next panel of witnesses. I want to thank you very much for making time to give evidence. Now, first of all, we just need to get you sworn in. So could each witness, starting from my left, please state their name and position title and swear either an oath or an affirmation. Dr. Little.
My name is Dr. Deirdre Little. I'm a GP obstetrician. I've worked in obstetrics for 25 years at Bellingen Hospital and in accident and emergency for 35 years. I was medical director of Lily Rose Antenatal Clinic.
And your oath or affirmation, it should be there.
I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you, Dr. Little. And actually, we've been joined by Ms. Chung. Ms. Chung, would you like to state your name, title, and also swear either an oath or an affirmation?
My name is Carla Chung, and I'm a migrant support worker from the Australian Catholic Religious Against Trafficking of Human under the Anti-Modern Slavery Unit. I would like to take the oath under the Bible, please.
So just...
I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Dooley?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name's Ruth Dooley. I worked with Lily Rose in a voluntary capacity in the role of reception and administration for about 9 years.
And you could make the... we just need to get you the...
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Fox.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Fox, and I was a voluntary support worker of the Lily Rose team, interacting with some migrant worker mothers and mothers-to-be holding visas. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thanks, Mrs. Fox. Mrs. Downs.
Thank you. My name is Bev Downs, and I was a volunteer registered nurse at Lily Rose. And I swear to give evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thanks very much, Mrs. Downs. Now, to begin with, would any of you like to make a brief statement, 2 to 3 minute statement, before we open up to our questioning? Dr. Little, you would? Ms. Chung, would you like to make a brief statement? Yes. So we'll start with you, Dr. Little.
Thank you. As mentioned, I'm a GP obstetrician. I've worked in the area here in hospitals for 35 years. 25 of those was doing intrapartum obstetric care. And I directed Lily Rose Antenatal Clinic from 2015 till September 2025. We cared closely for pregnant migrant women for a decade. We therefore have first-hand experience of the risks and problems arising for these mothers and their families. As well as providing care, we have communicated their issues to Coffs Harbour Health Campus, to pathology and ultrasound providers, with our local members of parliament, with colleagues, and ensured a submission via Catholic Women's League went through to this inquiry. My statement and evidence relate to terms of reference A, H, I, J and K. Pregnant migrant workers and student visa holders do not have Medicare access to antenatal care or confinement support financially. Migrant workers are hard-working, reproductive-aged labourers contributing to our economy, yet there is no provision of care during one of the most perilous times of their lives, even though they continue to work while pregnant. The women we have cared for at Lily Rose Antenatal Clinic, we came to know well. We knew their families and their situations. They are keeping our primary industries afloat, as we were informed during COVID, when migrant worker entry to Australia was blocked. We were told the produce would perish without them, that the fruit would rot on the vine. I and colleagues will present the lived experience of these mothers and their families, since they are fearful to draw attention to themselves. They have no pregnancy assistance, but have the same medical needs as other mothers, with problems to be screened for, treated, or prevented. Antenatal care is to prevent bad outcomes for mothers and babies, yet the required cost as private patients for these mothers is prohibitive. Pathology companies charge $150 just to draw the blood for blood tests, let alone the expense of the actual routine pathology advised in Australia. These mothers are charged approximately $180 for a routine antenatal visit to the hospital, where they may see a direct entry midwife without registered nurse qualifications. And I might add that this is approximately 3 times the bulk billed benefit that's available for an antenatal consultation. These mothers formed a substantial part of our Lily Rose clientele. They were cared for pro bono by our clinic, by GP obstetricians, RNs and midwives. This care involved all scheduled antenatal care visits, all pathology expenses, if they couldn't manage themselves, which almost none of them could, all required ultrasounds, all required specialist consultations, and all the required allied health referrals. It involved medical and nursing home visits. Lily Rose funded their antenatal care, both in the clinic and at the hospital, under shared care. It provided baby goods, car seats, occasionally food, and referrals to other support agencies as well. Finances for this care and support came from donations via Lifehouse Church, some other churches, some from the Catholic Church, predominantly Lifehouse Church though, from private individuals and from the bulk billing intake from other mothers who had Medicare entitlement. Without this care, problems such as gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, intrauterine growth retardation, pregnancy-associated hypertension, cardiac complications, hyperemesis, thyroid effects, placenta previa, multiple pregnancies, anemia, iron deficiency, common vitamin deficiencies and haemoglobinopathies, etc., would go undetected, unmanaged and untreated. Some of these are potentially lethal complications for the mother and or the baby. Migrant worker mothers in this area relied on us for this care. There is a potential impact of death and morbidity for migrant worker women denied access to Medicare for pregnancy care. They are also billed as private patients for their delivery in the hospitals. Lily Rose filled out hardship forms for these women, which our nurse would present to the hospital when accompanying these mothers there on visits. These hardship forms were often handed straight back to our RN by billing staff without further action. Hospital billing staff have approached these women during induction of labour and immediately after caesarean deliveries to ask who is going to pay for this. Lily Rose was informed by both the Coffs Harbour pregnancy care social worker and by the head of the social work department that Lily Rose were not permitted to make referral to the social worker for our pregnant women who are migrant workers. This was even though we were in a professional shared care capacity and arrangement. Rare patients could afford bupa pregnancy insurance in advance, but were unable to obtain from social work or from the finance department what the hospital would and would not consider was covered by their complex policies. Visa settings mean there is much apprehension around pregnancy and birth. The alternative, free birthing, without care, has a known maternal and infant mortality rate that is unacceptable. One notable patient had been presented with a list of pregnancy and birth costs amounting to many thousands of dollars at the start of her pregnancy from a practice in, I will say it was in Inverell. Copies of this letter have been submitted, or as I wish to table them, and they have been handed in. She travelled 4 hours to attend our clinic for antenatal care and worked 2 jobs, including at an abattoir, to be able to afford to take some time off after the birth. Pregnant migrant workers are here to support our primary and other industries, and they deserve the utmost care and respect. This includes more than words and more than access to abortion, more than a printed list of costings for pregnancy running into many thousands of dollars, and more than nudging them towards abortion. They deserve our standard of antenatal care and its provision without pretending they can afford the bills sent to private patients. They would greatly benefit from antenatal care clinic access, from confinement care offered in the region in which they work and whose industry and economy they support. They would benefit from specialist pregnancy referral when needed, like everyone else. The healthcare reasons are obvious, and the care they need is obvious. We can do no less. Saying that they perhaps should have aborted their baby or should abort their baby or should have had a long-acting contraceptive inserted is disrespectful to their culture and beliefs, and I think it contributes to fostering a slightly dismissive attitude towards their care at higher levels. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Little. Ms. Chung.
Yeah, today I would like to make a statement about the pump scheme workers who are working in the coastal of New South Wales, which I've been in touch with since a few years. I've came and visited them last year along the coast. Most of them are living in an overcrowded accommodations, sharing minimum 2 people to up to 6. Previously, there were up to 10 people in one cabin. Regardless of how many people are sharing, the cost of the amount that they pay for the week is the same if they work for the same approved employer. Workers are too scared to speak up about the condition of their accommodations. So because I've looked after workers around Australia, so we do actually compare that certain situation with workers living or working in different area around Australia, that some people might be coming from the same villages from the same country, but working in different state in Australia, but could be bringing different amount of money because of the extra cost that they are covering for accommodation. For example, I have a specific sort of example where a worker come from a village of somewhere in Nauru. They're cousins, and one works in Western Australia, another one works in coastal of New South Wales. The one who works in Western Australia lived in a 1-bedroom with no sharing, with all the available facility, paying $125 per week, while the one in the coastal of New South Wales paying $170 per week, sharing between 2 or 6 or up to 10 people in a cabin. So this is specifically on their accommodation basis. And they do run into issues where there's a lot of people sharing. We are looking at workers who will come under the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, workers who comes under the backpacker sort of scheme, tourists, and there's a few different country coming in together in the same space under different approved employer or different labour hire, and the costs of the accommodation itself may vary from different approved employer or labour hire. So I think these things need to looked at, and then often sometimes certain things went wrong, or something get damaged. Everyone ended up have to take responsibility over it, and they are often charged with an extra deduction when something is broken or run down related to their accommodations. The second issue that I want to talk about, and we can touch further about the accommodation later, but the second thing that I want to talk about is the issue with piece rate. It's very difficult with workers who are working in piece rate because they don't know how to calculate whether they're underpaid or they are paid correctly. This is because piece rate, it's actually rely on what would be the average workers working in the same space. We're not talking about counting the fastest or the slowest workers. So sometimes when that happens, a lot of workers are underpaid if it gets calculated. It's difficult because if they come under the PALM schemes, they will be told that if they're too slow, they will not be coming back next year. But not with the amount of money that they earn is basically on what they worked on. So I think that's an extreme unfairness. Often they are tied to owing the money to the approved employer that brought them in. The third sort of issue that I'm actually going to touch on is the deduction and the contract. Under the PALM scheme, the minimum contract for short-term workers is 6 to 9 months. However, it is actually still a lot of some sort of approved employer currently now in coastal of New South Wales, in Coffs Harbour and Corindi, where an approved employer brought workers and the contract that they've signed is actually 9 months to work. But if you looked at the way how their flights are booked, they are booked to come and work for 4 months and 1 week, which is not what the regulation is saying. I am referring to 177 workers who are under this contract right now. 32 workers has just recently moved to Tasmania. And I think this issue happened last year. This is brought to the attention of PALMs, but it happened again this year. So I think this needs to be looked at, because this is at the cost of the workers, because the first 3 months when they work, they are paying for the amount of money that they owed with the flight, the accommodations, the extra cost of bringing them here. By the time when they finish with their deduction, usually the season finish and their contract get cut short and they almost immediately get sent home, which means that they are going home with no saving. And it's really sad to see a lot of them who has family, which can actually bring a lot of issue, whether they are psychologically, mentally, because the family have that expectation that they come to work to better their life and to support their family. But just to think about, when the seasons are bad, you're getting $200 a week. How much can you earn to, to do a running cost for your own expenses in Australia, let alone to save, or if you have a wife or a husband at home with 2 children minimum. We're talking about the Pacific and Timor-Leste here. Most people have more than 2 children. This is a very difficult situation, and I think it needs to stop.
Thanks, Ms Chung. We might move to the first questions there. I might actually go straight to the Deputy Chair, because I'm just conscious of our time.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Ms Chung, I wanted to come back to some of the housing elements, but I just wanted to clarify, Dr Little and Ms Dooley, we've got you listed as being representatives of the Catholic Women's League Australia, but in terms of your opening remarks and your swearing in, you mentioned your voluntary work with Lily Rose, and I just wanted to clarify, if you could, the connection between the two.
Thank you for that. We believed in Catholic Women's League that the problem was more widespread than just in Coffs Harbour. So instead of doing 2 submissions, I wrote 1, and it was entered as the submission. I think you would have a copy of it. It was entered via Catholic Women's League. So rather than writing a second submission for Lily Rose, we were happy with that first submission.
Deidre represents both.
I'm the medical director of Lily Rose.
Right, so there's a direct connection between the 2 organisations, or just for yourself?
For Deidre herself.
I don't know about a direct connection, but I wear 2 hats. And a Catholic Women's League will frequently put in submissions, and we believe this to be a statewide problem. Although our examples given were from Lily Rose, we do believe the problem isn't just confined to Coffs Harbour.
Right.
So Catholic Women's League put in a submission, which I didn't duplicate from Lily Rose.
No problem. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it, Dr Little. Ms Chung, you talked about the kind of challenges around housing pressures, and one of the things that we've heard from the previous session was indeed the fact that in many cases workers in this situation will not, they may know their rights, but they may not be comfortable to act on them because of the reasons you've discussed in terms of like the need to stay employed, the risk to family if people then raise those concerns. I wonder, in your experience with the substandard accommodation and housing situation, how many examples you would see where workers in that situation, or indeed their families, would feel comfortable to raise that like any other person would in relation to through a tenancy advice and advocacy service, or raise it through other channels, versus the idea of thinking that's just the given. And I guess, what do you see as the out for those people in those substandard accommodation? What options do they have if they can't afford to pay the rent? Are they accessing homelessness services, other types of crisis accommodation? What pathways exist?
I think I am talking directly in relation to the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility workers. So they have the option to have their own rental to go seek outside. However, the tricky sort of situation here is if they're on the short-term contract, it is impossible to get a rent or a lease out there, because mostly you will be able to at least get like 6 months.
Yes.
But if you look at the condition here where they have a contract of 5 months, but their contract, they're only working for 4 months and 1 week. So that's impossible. So they are actually fully reliant on their approved employer. I have to actually declare that I have spoken to workers and had meeting with them last night prior to coming to this meeting. There has been workers who wanted to come and speak on this forum. There is representative of 2 men and a woman who would like to come and speak to the forum, as far as that the government is actually making sure that they are coming back on their next assignment, that they are protected to speak up. I think that's one of the biggest fear of them having. If they speak up, they will never able to come back the next season, and their family are relying on as little income that they get from here.
Thank you, Ms. Chung.
Thank you.
Maybe just in relation to that, to say that it is absolutely open through yourself as a witness, and to say I'm happy for you to take it on notice that if those individuals wanted to provide anonymous information or details to the committee, that you then were happy to submit that would be possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to say that we acknowledge that in the previous session as well, there was evidence from Ms. Honnett saying that there was indeed issues around people not being willing to step forward.
Correct.
Sorry,
Thanks.
Jenny, just to interrupt, maybe worth mentioning that we can do in-camera hearings as well.
Yeah, I would have assumed that's
Yeah,
already been shared with people, but maybe not.
We
So
might
feel free.
ask the Secretariat to follow up with you, Ms. Chung, to make sure that you're aware of what's available for people to give evidence.
Because indeed we can do them
in
confidentially
camera.
as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kane.
Thank you all very much for appearing and for the work that you've done, clearly over a long period of time. I have one very quick question. You all spoke in the past tense about Lily Rose. Yeah. Is that because it's no longer operating, or there's been a change in people?
We ran out of donations in September, because we're pro bono. We ran out of donations in September 2025, so that was the last clinic that we had. I've also happened to have moved away down to Barrel, so I didn't feel it was safe to run the clinic from a long distance, and unless we could afford to continue to employ the midwife that we actually had employed quite recently, and I thought it was safer to not try to do that. So at that point, I'm afraid, because of lack of donations and money, we had to close the clinic.
Right, okay, thank you. I'm sorry to hear that. Ms. Chung, if I could ask you, you were talking about piece rates. So piece rates have been illegal for the last couple of years. There's been a minimum award rate that came in 2022. Is there, and I know that something being illegal and something being done are quite different, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but I just wondered, is there an understanding out there that there is meant to be a minimum wage? And is it that there's an understanding, but as Ms. Leong was saying, an unwillingness because of fear to try to claim that wage, or is there a lack of understanding that there is a minimum wage meant to be paid?
I think workers understand that they're not getting the minimum wage,
Right.
but if they protested to their approved employer, they will not be able to come back next year.
So there's an understanding
because of the
that
nature of the contract.
Okay, so it's
Yes.
less about an educative, and
There-
more about...
Yeah, there is no guarantee right to return
Gotcha.
under these situations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, that was... my
Thanks,
question.
Dr. Kane. I'm just actually going to ask Ms. McDonald, would you like to ask a question?
I think you answered it before. I was just saying how sustainable are community-run clinics, but obviously they're not sustainable as you've
Well, I mean, it was sustainable for 10 years, which I think is a pretty good innings for a volunteer pro bono clinic. It was partly because having reached the age of 70 as well as moving away, there were multiple factors. It wasn't just the financial. It was then having to employ a midwife to take my place.
Yeah,
at that
and
point.
you mentioned, I think in here, that is it Dr. Joe Turner. He's Armidale based, isn't he?
Yes, he moved
now.
to Armidale. So.
Yeah, he is now, but originally he was, he and Dr. Little alternated at the clinic.
Yeah.
And the other factor was the rest of us were volunteers. So when you're not forking out for wages, we were able to sustain it.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't if you're paying wages.
Can I interrupt you for a moment? Can I just ask Dr. Little, Ms. Dooley, I'm just trying to understand, I thought workers came with some level of insurance, health insurance to Australia. It's actually required. Are you saying that it didn't cover pregnancy care?
Most of the workers that we had didn't come under PALMs. I think we had 3 that were under PALMs. The rest were under independent arrangements. Only one I'm aware of had insurance, and that was with Bupa, and it was unfathomable, the contract. We sent it to the social worker at the hospital. It seems like she couldn't work it out either. And the client went and had the baby without really understanding what she'd be up for. So the ones that come independently, they did not have private insurance.
So the PALM...
For pregnancy.
So just to be clear...
pregnancy.
Yes, just to be clear, the people on the PALM scheme, in your experience, were covered with private health insurance for pregnancy?
No, not the people that we had under PALMs. They weren't. We only had 3 of about 40 that were under PALMs, but they were not covered by private health. We only had 1 who was covered by private health, and this person was not under PALMs.
And just the other women that you saw, they weren't PALMs, they weren't working holiday makers, you weren't entirely sure how they were here?
They were under, I think, independent contracts was our understanding.
Well, they'd still have to have a visa, though.
Well, they had done that independently. Some had brokers as well and come in under that method. Our aim was to really provide them with antenatal care that there was no other provision for.
Okay.
We weren't legally involved in the nature and the settings of their visas, except to know that they didn't have Medicare cover of any sort for antenatal care or for delivery.
Okay, thank you. Greg, would you like... Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all for coming along. And I have to say, it's sort of word comes to mind, tragic to hear about the closure of Legally Rose. I've not been there, but tragic for obviously what's been very valuable and meritorious work in the community. I've just got a couple of questions, and I'm conscious of time. My colleagues have the document that's been circulated on the Life House Care letterhead / Lily Rose. It's I'm just looking at it. It's a 4 and a bit page document, and on the bottom it's got by duty. I guess that's Alcock registered nurse RN.
Correct.
Could you please, and I don't mind who answers this, but explain who Ms. Alcock is, and if anyone, and I presume if she worked there, I'm guessing here, or was associated with it, confirm that you have some first-hand relationship with her and can validate it if we could sort of describe it,
Oh, yes.
what's in here.
Okay.
I say that because, I mean, obviously she's not providing evidence to the inquiry, and this is a document which we just need a bit more information about.
Thanks, Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Judy Alcock was a registered nurse, previously a midwife, at our clinic for 8 years. She is currently in Tasmania on holiday without any internet or any reliable internet connection. And she wrote down her experiences directly over those 8 years that she worked. We were all pro bono, by the way, over the 8 years that she worked at Lily Rose. And we did manage to get reception and talk on the phone about this 2 days ago, and we've exchanged multiple emails about this. So I'm aware of her first-hand experiences, both at the time when they were happening, and my colleagues here also have written down experiences that these pregnant migrant workers were noted to have as first-hand experiences. Judy has mentioned other experiences, and because she knew she wouldn't be able to attend this inquiry, she wrote these pages out. And we talked about them, and we're all aware of the issues that she's raised just from direct communication with Judy and with the clients.
Thank you. That's a validating statement. I appreciate it.
Judy was instrumental in actually starting the clinic for Lily Rose.
May I ask, through the chair, time permits, there's obviously a number of, I'll use the word examples because that's what it's called on staying on page, I'm halfway down page 2, examples. Perhaps from any of the 4 witnesses associated with Lily Rose, do any of these ring a bell, or you have some
I've
knowledge
got a
of?
couple of the
and if so,
examples
well, if so, and once again, subject to time, but perhaps point us to it, or to whichever ones, and perhaps elucidate a bit.
Or speak yourself.
Okay, thank you. Look, I'm using 2 examples that were listed in that.
Right.
And they relate to the accommodation. So following on from what's already been said, I'll just highlight their plight with 2 examples.
Yep.
So one of the ladies we assisted with the baby goods was located on an isolated property.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Could you just identify which number we're referring to here?
Sorry.
Are you referring to particular ones in the document, or? I mean, if not, doesn't matter. I'm just trying to...
Yeah, so like Judy wrote those out as notes.
Okay, right,
knowing
fair
that
enough.
she
I won't
couldn't
interrupt.
be
I'll let you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's all right.
Personal and isolated.
I think if you just proceed, Ms. Dooley, I think that would be great. Thank you.
So she, the partner, and her new baby were living in a shed that housed up to 10 other men, so exactly like you were saying. The couple eventually were able to find motel accommodation, but that consisted of 2 adjoining rooms, and the second room had another family in it as well. So, and there was no cooking facilities. They had to access the communal kitchen to be able to do any cooking. The second example is of a mother who had no provision at all for her baby. The hospital staff actually contacted Lily Rose and requested support for her. We purchased the essential baby items, which included a baby capsule, so that we could take her home from the hospital, because the booked taxi failed repeatedly to come and pick her up. As it turned out, her home was a glorified shed, also out on an isolated property and reached by a perilous track, and many kilometres from the city. The toilet was an outside portaloo, and the cabin itself was sort of situated on a dam. Very, very rough basic conditions. Now, this lady obviously had no partner or family support, no transport, no eligibility for services, and no money. So Lily Rose were able to provide for her needs until the local women's refuge took her and the baby in. But I must mention here too, though, she pleaded with us to be able to look after the baby so that she could go back to work. So she wasn't after a free ride. And of course they were eventually deported. And then as a postscript to that story, the hospital then sent Lily Rose an account for $2,726 for their hospital care.
Which hospital was that?
Coughs. Even though we only came into the picture after her discharge. So, and we often found ourselves battling the system and the attitude that these women were very much a lower class. The ladies were repeatedly pressured to sign up for a payment plan or to make payment in advance before their consultations, despite our advocacy for their hardship situation. And because neither option were available, the lack of real care and compassion was evident. So, yeah, the accommodation and the health.
So just to be clear, the health service, it sounds as though the health service was trying to recover their debts.
Yes.
I presume they would try and do that for all of the people that you were working with. In this particular case, they decided to come after you for the money.
Yes.
Right.
Is there a reason for that? How did they know if it was
Some,
post-discharge?
well, often we would pay bills for, or
But not for confinement.
not so much the bills for confinement, but some of their consults.
Yeah.
But in this instance, given it was post-discharge, how did they know to bill you?
Because they had contacted us for the support.
They simply have
And-
a name.
Yes. And obviously they're running a business, so they're going to try and recoup costs if they can.
So
Yes.
I understand that. I'm just wondering, normally you wouldn't just pick someone. Did they speak to anyone at your? Was there some?
No agreement with it, no.
Miss
Sorry,
Watts?
can I just
Yes,
follow
by
up
all
one
means.
more question? So they were deported. So obviously these people weren't on a visa at the
I
time.
think by that time it had expired. Yeah.
Just one more quick one, if I
Yes.
may, just in regards to a part of, I think, the opening statement that Dr. Dill made. I think if I wrote it down correctly, we're talking about the hardship forms, and I think you used language a bit like examples of hardship forms that were handed back without action taken. Just on this issue of the hardship forms, I presume that for a number of instances of women being supported by Lily Rose, it accompanied a hardship form application. Was the scenario a bit like, well, who blinks first? You go in there and you present the form on behalf of the woman who's expecting, and the circumstances of what Lily Rose supports is pretty well known, I presume, by the hospital. And there's some decision just made there or then about whether or not support will be forthcoming. Is that? And either you pull back with the pregnant woman or the hospital said, oh, well, OK, we'll let this one through. Is that kind of crudely how it worked?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
OK. So crude as
So
that.
they would have tried to avoid accepting the costs, yes, if they could.
Or they'd send you the bill after anyway.
Yeah.
Like the example.
And then it's up to us to fight that and, not pay it, yes.
Is it possible to provide us a copy of that bill under?
Probably, yes.
I don't have it. Judith might be able to.
We
Can we endeavour to do
we-
that for you?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. Fox and Mrs. Downs, would you like to make a comment or
Yes.
statement? Yes, Mrs.
Well,
Downs.
I would like to make a statement that I've got written out. As a volunteer, registered nurse at Lily Rose Antenatal Pregnancy Support, part of Lifehouse Care, I witnessed the vulnerability of the migrant fruit picking workers. I and my daughter, who is a midwife and credited lactation nurse, visited a young Taiwanese migrant couple living in a small cramped area beneath a person's house. Communication was difficult as English was their second language. There were concerns for the first-time mum and her baby. The baby was being breastfed and crying often. The mother was worried about her baby and her ability to breastfeed. Her breasts were engorged. We were there to support and just to assess, checking for signs of mastitis. We were able to encourage them and leave them with some helpful instructions. They were both very thankful. These mums and dads, like new parents, need reassurance and access to health care. There was no postnatal care they could afford except Lily Rose, which we're just volunteers. And my daughter was actually up for Christmas holidays. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Downs. Mrs. Fox, would you?
Yes. Thank you. As I said before, Margaret Fox, and I'm a voluntary support worker, or was, of the Lily Rose team, interacting with some migrant worker mothers and mothers-to-be holding visas. It's been a special highlight of my life to have had the opportunity through Lily Rose for around 8 years to be part of the support staff welcoming and helping clients. I particularly enjoy meeting, understanding and interacting with migrant mothers and their families, so appreciated this opportunity to do so through Lily Rose. It's been encouraging to see migrants, some of whom needed a translator, grow in their trust and appreciation as we supported them in various ways, from welcoming them at the door of the clinic, walking with them to have blood tests, providing baby clothes and other necessary practical items, and showing genuine care in whatever way was needed. In my time at Lily Rose, I visited a couple of homes where migrant worker mothers holding visas lived. This gave me some insight into the substandard housing conditions in which some migrants with their little ones were often accommodated. One place where we checked how a mum was managing and took a special handmade toy was like a shed at the back of a house. Another was a cabin in a camping ground where we were able to provide clothes and other necessities for the mum and baby who were still to arrive home from hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fox. We might bring the session to a close there. I want to thank all of the witnesses for appearing today. We may have a number of follow-up questions that we'd like to send to you, and we'll be in touch with that information. I hope you'll be able to provide us with answers to that. But once again, can I just thank you very much for appearing today, and thank you very much for your evidence.
Thank you.
We'll excuse you now. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next panel. Thank you very much. Delpesh.
Yes.
And Ms. Wade.
Yes.
Welcome. And thank you very much for making time to give evidence. Now, I wonder if we could start just first of all by getting you to state your name, your title, and then swear either the oath or the affirmation. And we'll start with yourself, Ms. Wade.
Yes. So my name is Alexandra Wade, and I'm a clinical nurse consultant in hepatology, working for HIV-related programs in North Coast Public Health. And just to read this.
Yes.
Yes. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thanks very much. And Dr. Delpesh.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Valerie Delpesh, and I'm the Director of the North Coast Population and Public Health Directorate through the Mid-North Coast Local Health LHD, but it also covers Northern New South Wales LHD as well, our work, just to be clear on that. My affirmation, I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Would either of you like to make a brief opening statement?
Yes.
Dr. Delpeche, okay.
Okay, so as I've said, I'm the director of the North Coast Population Public Health Directorate. It actually covers both mid-North Coast and northern New South Wales in terms of our services. Our services are very much focused on prevention, early identification and timely management of communicable diseases in particular, but also a range of services including refugee health sit under our portfolio, environmental health sit under our portfolio. And we identify key populations, and certainly palm workers in the recent years has been identified as a key priority for our region. In particular, many of the workers originate from countries with high rates of STIs and HIV, hepatitis and tuberculosis, including Fiji, Papua New Guinea, at the moment undergoing very high rates of HIV and an epidemic, which is a concern to the region more broadly. Over the past 18 months, across New South Wales local health district, there's been reports of increasing syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia diagnoses among palm scheme workers, alongside cases of late-stage HIV and hepatitis. The local health district has also, many local health districts have also reported a rise in late-stage pregnancy presentations with no prior antenatal care. We are working closely with our colleagues in the Ministry of Health to support the sexual and reproductive health needs of palm workers in particular in our space, and identifying opportunities to improve access to services and support more broadly. So we're very aware that there are a number of challenges for palm scheme workers in our area and more broadly across New South Wales, particularly in accessing and navigating adequate health care, poor housing and sanitation conditions. The Ministry is working in partnership with local health districts, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the New South Wales Council of Pacific Communities, NIB, health insurance and other NGO partners to improve the health and wellbeing of scheme workers in New South Wales. In 2024, to better understand the needs on the ground for palm workers, New South Wales conducted a consultation of over 40 stakeholders of palm workers and palm scheme employers, including country liaison officers, community connections workers, as well as New South Wales Council of Pacific Communities. Both workers and palm scheme employers cited limited availability of services in regional areas as a major concern, together with socio-structural challenges such as lack of knowledge of services, transport issues, language difficulties, fear of stigma, cost and limited cultural responsiveness of our services, such as translators being available on the ground. The consultations highlighted the need to improve our health outcomes for palm workers in New South Wales, to strengthen our primary care workforce capacity and enhance employer accountability in providing access to healthcare, safe accommodation, information and support. The Commonwealth Government, as you're aware, is responsible for determination of in-country health checks prior to worker arrival. Health checks can vary depending on the country where the workers are coming from and the type of the work they will be doing in Australia. The checkup may include a fitness of work assessment, vaccinations, blood tests, chest x-rays. Unfortunately, New South Wales Health does not have access to any of these records on arrival. Workers who leave the scheme intentionally or unintentionally are referred to as disengaged workers, as you know. They are considered in breach of their visa conditions and health insurance is cancelled, leaving them very vulnerable, and we have seen a number of these clients through our services. New South Wales does not have access to any data on the number of disengaged workers. So our oversight of these workers is limited to anecdotal feedbacks from clinicians on the ground, in EDs, in community health centres, our sexual health centres and other NGOs. We're committed to working more closely, and to that end, in 2024, the New South Wales Health STI Programs Unit established a working group, particularly focusing on sexual health and reproductive health within the Ministry. The members include local health districts, multicultural HIV hepatitis services, family planning, and the Australian Sexual Health and HIV Medicine Group. A work plan has been developed over the last 18 months with a range of activities to improve things such as mapping and developing toolkits for palm workers and LHDs to better understand what is accessible and what's available, developing dedicated web pages to provide information and referrals and resources for palm workers and employees and health professionals. And they have worked also with 17 New South Wales employers to create New South Wales Health Education Package, which has a facilitations notes. Many of those employers now use this package to deliver health information when palm workers first arrive. While this package focuses on sexual and reproductive health, it also gives information about navigating the healthcare system, health insurance, consent, and healthy relationships. We've also developed tailored safer sex packs, condom dispensers, pocket-sized information kits, a suite of sexual health production, health fact sheets, and these are being translated. We've also engaged the University of Sydney to undertake a needs assessment of the sexual and reproductive health needs of the PALM scheme workers, developed tailored toolkits for primary care practitioners, and developing a PALM peer education model in partnership with multicultural HIV and hepatitis services, family planning, and New South Wales Health and Pacific communities. New South Wales Health is also engaged closely with the other state teams in Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, and the Australian ACT to support similar national projects. So I wanted to outline there what's happening at the ministry level, but obviously we'll focus today on what we're also doing here at the Mid-North Coast, and my colleague's going to focus on those issues.
Thank you. Ms Wade, do you want to make an opening statement?
I do.
Just brief. We just do want to ask questions, and we're now down to 17 minutes to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I've been involved with PALM scheme workers since the COVID period, which I can't give you the exact year. It's a bit of a COVID blur. As a public health unit, we were involved in outbreak management, and we were asked to come out to the worker accommodation at Arrawarra and to do antigen testing and follow-up treatment and welfare checks. At that time, we found that the groups had been separated into islander groups and were living in much similar conditions to I've heard today, multiple people per cabin, and isolation for COVID positive patients were into multiple cabins together. And from there, we then were returned to provide COVID vaccinations. We had insufficient interpretation because of the situation and the timing, and that was a challenge. We provided follow-up care from the welfare workers came to us afterwards because we'd established some rapport as a public health unit with concerns with an increase in bloodborne virus and STI presentations to hospital that they were unaware were happening in the background, and we did a screening blitz with one particular islander group, the Solomon Islanders, in 2022, where we found high rates of bloodborne virus and STIs untreated, and we went through the process of providing external care to them through the farms. It was the only way we could really provide that care because leaving work to come into clinics was costing both the farm and the workers income. But we did encounter that over 70% had current or historic bloodborne virus or STI and were asymptomatic, so it was a high prevalence. So we tried to pay more attention to that at the time. And then more recently this year, we've had an increase in presentations again, and so we're trying to provide some kind of coordinated health outreach to the PALM workers. They're hesitant to go to the GP or to present to ED because of the upfront costs. Even though that can be then recouped through their insurance, there's a concern that if that there is a record of that insurance and what they've attended for, that at home that might be misinterpreted against their religious practices if they're married, and etc. So there are concerns there. And we've also had experience with unwanted or unexpected pregnancies. We have a couple of pregnant women coming through our service at the moment, and again experiencing challenges with accessing healthcare for those pregnancies because pregnancy is a 12-month waiting list on NIB insurance, as far as we have been told. So as a proactive thing, we've put in for a translational research grant to provide some alternate ways of caring for this community using peer navigators from the Pacific Island communities and provide quality improvement for our services. Women's Health have also experienced these with 2 children being given up. One was actually abandoned in a hotel because the woman was sent back to her country, and this was through DCJ as far as the Women's Health experience was.
Was that person on a PALM visa?
Originally, yes.
Okay.
When you say sent back, do you mean deported?
I believe so.
We just do have limited time. I'm just going to put on notice. You mentioned a consultation with 40 stakeholders, and has that been published? Is there any information in relation to the results of that? And also, you then had a number of other what sounded like documents that had been developed. Are they available, and can we request those?
I think they would be available. I can certainly require them from the New South Wales STIPU group. But yes, they haven't been published as such, but I think the summary of the findings and the work plan are available and can be made available to the inquiry.
Okay, thank you. And you did say that you were working in partnership with a number of agencies. Were they federal agencies?
So when I say we, I was speaking on behalf of New South Wales at this point, and so they are a number of agencies, both Commonwealth and state.
But you still can't get the number of people. You don't have access to the health records, pre-screening health records, and data on who's arriving and
That's
so
correct.
on. And apart from the individual concerns for individuals and their health, clearly outbreaks of these diseases represent actually a threat to the broader community. Okay, thank you. I don't know. That will do me. Ms. Leong, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask in terms of, and you covered it briefly, in terms of the private health insurance required, and obviously the kind of need to have a waiting period before you can access certain types of services. In your experience, the workers that are coming, what sort of level of health insurance health insurance cover do they have? Given that in a lot of cases this is dangerous, either manual labour or high risk kind of work environments, is the issue in the examples we're hearing that the cover required is not enough, or is the issue that the upfront costs associated with is the barrier? Or is there a combination of all those things, recognising obviously the preference is these people have access to our universal public healthcare system? Leave that aside, and in the current scenario, what do we see as the barriers or the risks?
I believe it's a combination of all of those things. So currently their insurance is around about $18 a week that comes directly from their pay, and it's the basic cover.
Yeah.
And there are waiting periods on particular illnesses and conditions, pregnancy being one of those. I think also it is a hesitancy to use the health insurance in case that jeopardises their visa status, or if there's concerns that they're costing too much. But also definitely the upfront costs are often prohibitive when most of the money has been sent home, or it's $170 to attend an ED or $200 to see a GP. If they need bloods, it's $350 to have bloods attended at a health service. So it is quite a lot, and as a public health unit, we don't charge those fees, but it costs somebody.
Do you rely on them attending other practitioners as part of that network of treatment identification of the issues?
That's how it's set up through the employer, is that they will go to GPs generally, but what's happening is they're not going to GPs because of this. And so as a public health unit, then they're coming to us as a publicly funded sexual health service.
That will be free when they come to those.
Sure, but there's that other barrier. Yep.
Yeah. So just to clarify, so if someone comes to you, if someone finds themselves in a situation where they've got a need for emergency healthcare, then they're not required to pay upfront costs, or they are before they're seen. Like they rock up to emergency with an injury that's not about pregnancy or reproductive health.
I would have to take that on notice to see exactly what happens. We've looked at our data very briefly to see the number of attendances from countries where the PALM scheme covers, and Medicare non-eligible. Now that could cover a number of visas, and the information's not great, but we know that just over the last 3 financial years, we've had over 1,000 attendants to emergency department in this region. As I said, it could be an overestimate, with doubling in that increase. So we do, and we are seeing more. We do need to understand that better. We need to look at the funding processes, and that's something I haven't taken on yet with my colleagues. But
so if we can take on notice, if you could get back to us and take that on notice,
Absolutely.
what I'm imagining is a scenario where someone rocks up to an emergency department, they're in a need of emergency treatment. Are they required to actually get out and tap their card before they're able to be treated? What's that process look like in terms of the steps from the public health system? And then I guess to the evidence that we heard previously in relation to the specific types of support being given for certain types of care, if someone is then pregnant and requires care of any reproductive nature or indeed pregnancy care, what is the requirements around that and how is that undertaken? It'd be really good to understand what those processes are from New South Wales Health's perspective.
And I think it will vary from local health district, but I'll come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Miss McDonald next, and then I'll come to Mr. Donnelly. Okay,
Sure.
but first, Miss McDonald.
So you mentioned you went on site
Yes.
to different locations. I'm just wondering, or when you've gone to these sites and you've noticed that the accommodation is inadequate, the services, is there an obligation to report those conditions to authorities, but in a way, because it's not the workers' fault that they're housed in these conditions, and bearing in mind, their cultural, that they don't want to cause trouble, but is there an obligation to report it in a respectful manner so that you're not putting the workers in jeopardy, like your duty of care, or to refer them to other services where they can be given adequate accommodation, or, I'm just trying to think in terms of, we're looking for evidence of modern slavery, and it's clearly there. What obligation is there for reporting of this?
I'm not sure what the obligation is there. I can say the accommodations that we did attend in COVID times are no longer being used, and that was shut down. At the time, our priority was actually containing COVID. As a public health unit, we were drowning in that, and as much as we could see that the situation wasn't ideal, it was also about containing at the time, so I really couldn't comment more than that.
Yeah, and so now are you going on site, or you're relying on the employer to say, hey, this worker's not well, bring them in, and then, I don't know, screening for STIs and all the other
The blood-borne viruses.
issues, but otherwise you're not seeing it there. So when you did see it, was there, where you thought perhaps I should be reporting this upline, because at the moment Medicare isn't covering the needs of these people? Because if it were, say, you'd gone on site and it was a young person, there would be mandatory reporting, wouldn't there? So why is it not the case when people are held in inadequate services that we don't have that same sort of duty of care?
Having said that, it has been escalated, which is why we now have a New South Wales group that's addressing some of these issues, and the relationship with other departments. So it is as a result of clinicians on the ground flagging these issues from across a number of LHDs. So in a way, it has been reported up the chain.
Oh, that's
in
good,
that
because
sense.
before it looked like you were working in silos but not working with other groups. It was, okay, let's just turn a blind eye, but you're saying that's not happening now.
Yeah, and it wasn't a blind eye. And to come back, we would love to go out and do more. As you know, the health system is under a huge financial constraint at the moment, so we are looking at creative ways of providing those opportunities. We're also really keen, I'm keen on the ground here, to make sure we have a much more welcoming village. As you know, approach to this where all the government and non-government organisations in this space with some adequate funding can really respectfully provide a safe haven to our palm workers, similarly to what we do for our refugee who arrive in the region.
Thank you. Ms Volz.
I was just wondering, one question that occurred to me was whether Health Direct, given that some of these people are in remote and regional areas and that they have translation and bilingual services, and it's a free service, I'm assuming with their status that they would be able to access that, and whether that in the first instance is a good way to get them to engage with the health system that can explain to them where to go to get help. And whether you've looked at that.
Yeah, so definitely in the toolkits that have been provided and developed for palm workers, this issue of getting adequate translation, I think the issue is making that really available, and so palm workers are aware of those various numbers, et cetera, which is why that critical introduction when they first arrive and orientation packages are so critical.
Yeah, because they already have translated services that could be slipped straight into one.
Can I make a comment to that? Yeah. We talk about translatable services as though someone's going to step in and say exactly what we're saying to somebody and they're going to understand it from that same perspective. In some islander communities, there is no delineation between organs. So for us to talk about a liver and what's happening with the liver, that's not understood as a different organs. And sometimes we weren't able to get the dialect of people we were working with. So the translation that we are using is really challenging to try and translate that information to. And
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's the same in some Aboriginal communities where numbers aren't part of the vernacular and they won't be able to define them.
Yeah.
But I'm the member for Auburn, so language difficulties is not something that's new to me. But so I get that, but here is one service that is linked into telephone interpreter services that has a nurse at the end of a phone. If you're on a remote farm, you could... I was just wondering how it's being built into, it's difficult for them to get to a hospital, at least for the woman that was pregnant, it would be an appropriate place for her to start.
If they have mobile service, I live in regional New South Wales and I don't have mobile service where I live, and I certainly don't have a landline. So there are going to be difficulties if they have credit on their phones, if that's been money that's been taken out of their account, and so there is lots of challenges.
But it's a good point that you've raised, Ms Volz.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask one other question about the person that was deported. Could you maybe take on notice, obviously they must have been off a visa. I don't know if you have access to how long they were off a visa. I assume it was a palm worker, how long they'd been disengaged, because if they came in late-term pregnancy,
Thank you. Mr Donnelly.
I understand the time, and that's not anyone's fault, just would love to have you another half an hour, but time is pressing. So I'll probably put some of my questions as supplementary questions, which will sort of, if you're agreeable, be dealt with after the hearing. But just whilst you're here, just a couple of minutes. The terminology, a hardship form, in the context of going to Coast Harbour Hospital and seeking care via a hardship form, that's obviously a vernacular phrase. What is the official name for a hardship form? Are you able to, or on notice?
I'll take that on notice.
Have you heard of a hardship form before?
No, I didn't until today.
You've never heard of a hardship form?
Not till today.
Not until today. Have you heard of a hardship form?
No.
Right.
So we're in the prevention, the health system's quite large. So
yes.
It might be that.
Yeah, and you're in the public health unit, which is quite a different role.
Very
yes.
I understand that.
Yes, which sort of begs the question about the reasons why maternal support and care is sort of being dealt with in the context of a sexual health service. I think that's a separate discussion. But with respect to the matter of the palm workers, and thank you, that's very valuable evidence you've provided. What about those who actually fall, dare I say, outside or underneath the formal PALM scheme program and present at the hospital in terms of, well, let's take maternal support. In other words, a woman turns up with a accompanied person, pregnant, etc. How's that dealt with? and it's confirmed up front they're not part of a PALM scheme, but they just present. How's that generally dealt with?
I would have to take that on notice.
Right. And just that team that you referred to that's looking at all these issues, could you just, and I'm sorry I didn't get it down quickly enough in your opening statement.
Yes.
What?
So it's within the New South Wales Health Ministry, and it's the STI, Sexual Health Transmitted Infections unit within that, which is part of the Centre for Population Health at New South Wales Health.
And does that deal with these matters that have been canvassed through other submissions and that and I'm sure you might have been here earlier today about matters to do with maternal health and maternal care?
Not specifically, but they would be aware of that and we could channel that to the right people.
Sure.
And can I just follow up on that? So that group is actually looking at these issues in the context of refugee health and migrant health?
No, this particular group was set up for PALM workers specifically.
Specifically for PALM workers?
Yes. Looking at sexual and reproductive health issues.
And it's within the ministry?
And it's within the ministry.
Right.
And can I just
That's interesting.
One final question, and please, it's not a criticism, just a question though. We almost always receive a written submission from New South Wales Health in regards to parliamentary inquiries. I mean, I can't think of one where we haven't received a written submission. Did you actually seek to... Sorry, I'll withdraw that, that's not fair. Did New South Wales Health indicate to you that they were going to make a submission and it didn't happen, or they'd said to you, listen, you do the important work up there, you go and present orally at the hearing? What were your instructions?
So I think the invitation came to us, to the local health district.
Right.
So I'm not sure that the New South Wales Health had been provided that option.
Oh, really? Right.
I don't know.
No, that's okay. So came directly.
We'll pick that up actually,
Yeah,
because
it might be...
it does raise an issue about New South Wales Health's interaction with the inquiry. But
Yes.
we'll pick that up. Actually,
thank you for your evidence.
It's come up before. Thank you very much for your evidence.
And it is worth saying, I think, in the context of other hearings that we participated in, we were able to talk to other local health districts. So I think it is really great to have that perspective.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there is a need to have a holistic
I think so.
view
Yes.
from New South Wales Health as well. So,
That's it.
yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah, please, I'm not reflecting on the great work you do. It's just the...
No. That's why I just thought it's useful to reassure you that we have also heard from others in relation.
But likewise, there was a reticence,
Indeed.
in my view, to recognise this as a New South Wales Health issue. So
Indeed.
it appears that it is.
Yep.
But I do want to thank you for your work,
Yep.
which is really important work and often goes unrecognised, I think, within the broader health system. So thank you very much. And thank you for appearing. We'll excuse you now. We'll have a number of supplementary questions, and I hope you'll be able to reply to those. And thank you very much. We'll excuse you and we'll have our next witnesses. Thank you.
so much.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome to our next witnesses, Mr. Lang and Dr. Simpson. Thank you very much. Thank you for making time to give evidence. We'll start by getting you to either make swear an oath or an affirmation, and we'll start, because you're on my left, Mr. Lang, we'll start with you.
I swear that the evidence about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you very much. Dr. Simpson.
I'll give an affirmation. So I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Would either of you like to make an opening statement? Dr. Simpson, you would?
Yep.
Mr. Lang, would you like to make an opening statement after Dr. Simpson?
Sure, yes.
Okay, we'll start with you, Dr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd also like to thank Deputy Chair and committee members. Look, today I'm speaking from my personal experience and not on behalf of the governing body of the Nambucca Valley Council. I just want to start off with the standard we walk past is the standard we accept. I have had contact with temporary migrant workers myself, as well as people who have dealt with issues relating to temporary migrant workers, all facets of worker exploitation, which have the potential to result in modern slavery, debt bondage, the withholding of wages, restriction of movement, the retention of identity documents, isolation, abusive living and working conditions, no access to potable water or amenities on the farm face they are engaged in work, sometimes 8 to 12-hour days, physical and sexual violence. In the rural landscape, the coalface of modern slavery is the local community level. At the rural community level, we do not have the appropriate resources, support, regulation, compliance capacity, or legislative empowerment that is required to support state and federal programs designed to improve our rural workforce capacity and capability. At council level in the Nambucca, we have done frontline training supported by the New South Wales Slavery Commissioner team, and we're looking to create a migrant worker support network, but we have limited funding. I would like to make several recommendations to this committee on several legislative changes to be considered that would greatly improve temporary migrant worker support in the rural landscape that we're talking about here. The first one, and several speakers today have talked to this, New South Wales labour hire laws, inclusive of a mandatory state-based licensing scheme, and the current legal requirement for fair work and work health and safety requirements. This will be followed by a national labour hire licensing scheme. I'd also like to make mention of accountability frameworks. In our area, I would suggest that a berry industry accountability framework would go a long way to create advocacy for temporary migrant workers, bring accountability to the workspaces, we've talked about accountability to the actual growers where these workers are located, as well as the labour hire companies themselves and the industry bodies that profit from the industries we're talking about. And the last one here is the Rural Migrant Worker Support Centre. We talked about there is a centre in New South Wales. However, access to this centre is limited, so the consideration of a hub and spokes model where we, in our rural centres, get additional support to provide the support at the coalface. As a councillor, I ran on a platform on the right to farm with stewardship. However, this should never override the human rights of safety, health and well-being.
Thanks, Dr. Simpson. Mr. Lang.
Yes, I would just like to acknowledge the contribution from Dr. Simpson and just acknowledge that I'm here in a capacity as Senior Community Planner with the local planning team. We do strategic work. I liaise with the community sector who provides the services directly, but yes, as a level of local government, we're not the direct service providers in this space. In relation to farm workers particularly, we've provided information to the project about where workers can get access to services as a local point of contact. But yeah, we're not the direct service providers. We provide some 40 plus services to the community, and would certainly like to see the workers be able to get access to where services are located and be able to get the information they need to assist them. Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Simpson, I might start off, if you don't mind. You mentioned that in Nambucca you're looking at developing a migrant support network, which was your phrasing, I think. Can you just describe what that might look like in a bit more detail and where you're up to with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, we're actually at the start of this. For the Nambucca Valley, we are what I often term as the top of the iceberg, where essentially when we're talking about modern slavery and exploitation situations, we're just at the start. So, to be honest, we've been spending the last few months actually researching what other areas have done when they've gone into this particular situation. And so my response would be that we're exploring what has worked, what's not working. And in many ways, that's part of our contribution today, is to say we do need that support at that coalface to help co-design what's going to be fit for purpose in terms of supporting our workers, our temporary migrant workers.
And Mr. Lang, I accept that the Coffs Harbour Council doesn't provide direct services, but we've heard that there's a considerable number of palm workers here and elsewhere in the North Coast, that they're important to local agricultural industry, and possibly a range of other temporary migrant workers who aren't palm workers, such as working holiday makers or indeed people who aren't on visas. So how do you go about as a city planner accounting for that increased population and the impact it'll have on your services? Do you get information that helps you in that regard, or how do you determine how many people are in your community, and sort of what effect does that have on your planning? I'm just interested.
Yes, we rely heavily on sources such as the Australian Bureau of Statistics in terms of the 4 yearly census, demographic information, and any other reports. If we're doing a particular strategic piece, we would engage with the community sector and the services that work with people with lived experience in their particular areas. I don't know if that answers your question.
It sort of answers the question. I mean, the Bureau of Statistics is pretty old data when you get it, and I wouldn't have thought that it would necessarily include people here on, certainly people who are here illegally and not on visas. I'm not sure if it includes palm scheme people. It just seems to me that I just make the observation that, and would be the same for Nambucca, to be honest, that there's a significant part of your population that has considerable needs that comes every year that contributes to the economy, and it just doesn't sound to me as though you have a very good handle on how big that is or the extent of their needs. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. I'm happy for you to make either of you to make a comment on that. Yes, Dr. Simpson.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a comment on that. I think in terms of what would help us at the coalface, the local level, was actually when we're talking about welcoming and engaging with our temporary migrant worker population, it would be amazing to actually know who's coming into town. And how amazing would it be to evolve our palm worker scheme or any other schemes that we have in terms of our backpacker schemes, our 88-day scheme. Apologies if they're dated and we're no longer using the 88-day, but I know locally we still talk about that a lot. So
I think it still does apply, yep.
Okay. So how great would that be? I have heard the reasoning that would create privacy concerns, but at the moment the privacy concern is being used, I think, weaponised to create a level of uncertainty for the workers because they're not able to engage effectively with local services.
Thank you.
Can
Can I
Thank
ask a
you, Chair.
follow-up to that?
Yes,
Sorry.
sure, Ms McDonald.
Because it seems to me that instead of being provided the information, you've got to go searching for it, and by the time you get it, it's old. So what information is council given or provided, regarding the number of employers in your local government area that will be participating in PALM schemes or temporary migrant workers or ADA? Because surely there should be some, if you knew, then you'd be able to have welcoming committees, and if you knew where they were coming from, you would be able to have that service provision. But it seems to me you've got to go searching for it. It's not actually provided to you.
I think that would be a fair comment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll just add to that, how amazing would it be? I honestly think just that one piece of information will provide us with that support and positive network we're looking for.
Yeah.
And how do we create a welcome program when we don't know who's actually coming into town? I also believe it will help with that accountability framework between the growers, the high labour hire companies, as well as the industry they work to.
So there's that disconnect, isn't there?
Absolute disconnect.
We should be able, because it must be very distressing for you when you hear like workers have come in and then the first you hear is that they've been exploited. And that must be so distressing for you, knowing, oh, well, if we'd have known, we would have provided this, or, we would have had a welcome pack or something like that. But you haven't even had that opportunity to get to meet and greet. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it would benefit also, I think what happens when you have that divide, it does actually create a cultural divide. But because we're not actually taking part in what should be a great cultural journey here. Instead, it creates a group of people who are disenfranchised, vulnerable, and growing disengagement from the experience that they have actually put trust in us to come to Australia. Somebody else's kids have come to Australia to work here, and this is what's happening in Australia.
Yes, Mr. Dolan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you both for coming along today. It's most valuable to get this first-hand, off on the ground evidence from people doing great work for and on behalf of those in very vulnerable positions. I'm wondering whether you're able to, and if you can't, just say so. It's not a matter of criticism. We've spent a lot of time today and at other hearings talking about those who are in here in Australia formally under the PALM program and rights and obligations therein that sort of the individual has to follow. But there are a class of workers who are here doing work not under the formal PALM scheme. They can come in and be doing work in different ways. I mean, they can be brought in, for example, by outlaw motorcycle gangs in a serendipitous way where they're told that they might get a, all-pair job somewhere, and they come in, and you've heard the stories all before. But I'm just wondering, do you hear, in fact, much about that sort of, dare I say, off the grid work done? And this is not reflecting on the individuals, but just to get a sense of, we've got those in the formal PALM scheme, and that needs to be interrogated and looked at. But beyond that, people who are being very poorly treated and arguably exploited. So if you're able to give any sense of what you've experienced or seen, that'd be great.
Look, I'll speak from the Nambucca Valley perspective, is that, as I said, we're just at the start. We've only really started to go into what you would call quite solid picking season years over the last 2 years. So what has happened, and this is through, as I said, discussions with a large group of people, some of which will be talking in closed session. And basically the trend we're seeing is initially it was a range of PALM workers and also backpackers that had more English speaking capability. There has been a very swift transition to individuals who have less English speaking capability. We have very limited multicultural capability in the Nambucca Valley, so we're exploring how to support that. And more recently, coming back to your question, workers who have no working visas at all.
Really?
Now, we actually, and I do think it's something that, and we do actually have locations when we have inquired with authorities. The problem is, unless I have direct evidence, they will not come and do something to engage with that particular practice. So once again, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. We have locations, we have situations that I'm well aware of, and I'm well aware of being under parliamentary privilege here, because these are, as you say, potentially quite serious situations we're dealing with. And so, yes, I would say, Your Honour, that this is absolutely something we are aware of, but we do not have the capacity or capability locally in how to manage this at that coalface. And we would like, this is sort of part of this hearing, how do we work? We recognise this is here, but how are we managing this effectively, both at state, federal and local level?
So just to follow that on, I think you've indicated there fairly recent rapid growth in this issue. And is that because of an expansion of the horticulture?
Massive.
Right. What's that been like?
Okay, so over the last, when I came onto council, we had in the order of mid-20s farms, and I actually ran on a platform of trying to assist with updating our local environment plan, where we would put some sort of buffers, restrictions. We can go on farm to check accommodation, DAs, all of that. And we have had state pushback on that, but that's for another day. The challenge being is that since then we are now towards 60 farms. Very rapid increase. Now, obviously, a lot of those new farms don't have the produce ready to pick. Our challenge is the accommodation. I think it was previously mentioned that this rapid expansion doesn't come hand in hand with rapid accommodation availability. And so therefore the accommodation that's now being described and being utilised for the industry, very substandard. I think I mentioned before, over the last 2 weeks, some of the farms were basically, they have no potable water, but workers have to bring their own bottled water to access during a 10 to 12 hour work day. As you can see, I am quite emotional about this because we are really at that point of, how are we going to manage this? And it's very timely that we're having these discussions because, as I said, we're at the tip of our iceberg.
So if I can just go a little bit further before Ms. Volz. So
I hadn't finished, Chair.
And you hadn't finished yet? Yes. Okay. Okay. Well,
no, please,
my prerogative as Chair, but I acknowledge
put my hand up,
you did indicate that you've tried, well, I think you, just to clarify, when you've raised it with authorities, who have you raised it with? And it sounds as though they required quite specific information. Of course, that may not be available. You may well just have a general concern. Is that right? And they won't act without more specific information. And so the authorities you're talking about are federal?
Federal.
Federal, okay.
Yeah. And you know, in terms of, once again, it comes down to that local capacity. We don't have a great deal of local capacity. There is also, it comes back to the fear that's been expressed by several speakers today of the actual workers themselves. They're very fearful of engaging police, the authorities. So therefore, what happens is when one hears about this, one feels that we should do something to assist. However, then the workers aren't necessarily willing to come forward, right? So that's where the issue occurs, Mr. Chair.
I understand. I'm just going to go back to Mr. Donnelly, who I interrupted.
You nailed my question, Dr. McGurr. That was precisely my question.
Right. Okay. My apologies.
No.
Okay.
It's covered.
Well, we might move on to. Thanks. Don't move on to Ms. Volz then.
So I was just wondering, do you know if most of the palm workers coming through the region are direct employers or they're all coming through labour hire firms?
Now, and I will be very upfront now, because ever since I got onto council, I've now become a little bit more cautious and not being their direct contact. So as I said, there's a group of people who would be their direct contact. So I do believe that in the private hearings, more information will come out in relation to that. But my understanding is it is a real mix. And just so that you know, for example, and comparison, we do actually have a lot of very well engaged palm workers which are involved in the aged care sector in the Nambucca Valley. And I am not to hear any issues coming out from that space. And I wanted to make that very clear, which is why the concerns that I'm raising today are more to do with the intensive horticulture, which we absolutely have experienced.
And that would be because in the horticulture it's a short pick season, or there's a specific pick season, so you're more likely to get people coming through labour hire firms because they'd have to go from site to site, yes?
I believe you're correct, yeah.
I'd imagine the aged care sector is also, I just think the employment environment there would be much more regulated. I mean, you'd be coming in working side by side with people on strict award conditions, there'd be shifts and
Well, there's a lot of federal government oversight of the facilities themselves with constant inspection.
Yeah. So it's a completely different scenario to the horticultural, which is, as we've heard today, often off the grid. Accommodation can be way out to Billy O and so on.
Chair, can I come in
Yes.
with some questions?
Yes, of course.
Thank you both very much for your insights. I guess, first of all, I wanted to touch on Mr. Lang, and indeed happy to hear from the Nambucca perspective as well. One of the things that our communities know is that they rely on local government for a whole range of free services, library services, play groups, those kinds of things. What capacity do you as councils have to connect with communities that are coming as migrant workers in terms of this community building aspect? Or is that almost impossible because you don't know where people are located or their circumstances? I'm guessing that if you live in the council area, you can access the free library services, etc. But obviously people might not necessarily know they can do that. How does that work in terms of those connections and community supports?
Yes, I think it's particularly a concern for people in the agricultural sector because they're more isolated, may not have the transport, concern about their housing, and that sector generally is reported as not being helpful in terms of English or language or access and allowing them to access the services. Or informing them of their rights. So that's particularly a concern, and connecting with the community. It's certainly been a concern that the Palm project, how to connect with those library services and the programs that that our libraries run, and also other events like the All One Under the Sun event, which was held a couple of weekends ago. As a sort of community connection event and combating racism, so that they can feel more a part of the community and not as isolated in that particular sector. So certainly that's been what I've been hearing, that's the concerning sector.
Just on that, I mean, one of the things we heard from the session earlier was in relation to the briefings, the local in-country briefings that DUA runs in the Department of Employment, Education, Workplace Relations, DUA, runs in relation to once people are in the country, and Legal Aid had mentioned that potentially doing legal briefings. I'm assuming, given what you've said, that the local councils are not involved in those local briefings if you're not sure when people are coming and how many people are coming.
No, I'm not aware. I mean, we do collect strategies. We were involved with a little bit outdated now, but a refugee sector action plan. But
in terms of the Palm scheme workers coming or
other kind of not so much in that space.
Yeah, great. And then if I can, Chair, just in relation to, and I guess this is about knowing that often local councillors and indeed local government are closest connected to knowing the ins and outs of communities and how things work. And I take your comments, Dr. Simpson, that very much you're aware of kind of where these practices are and what's happening. In the communities that we're talking about, arguably there are people profiting from these substandard housing and accommodation situations and the exploitation of workers in the same way that there are the same community, like within the same communities, people helping to support and address that exploitation, and then all of those along the spectrum and around the way. How much of that, and I'm certainly not asking you in a public hearing to provide details or specifics, but I guess how much of it is all commonly known? I know, I'm from a very inner city community, but I can tell you now that there's a lot of knowledge in terms of the local street of which businesses pay their workers well and which ones don't, and how that works, and what company always goes broke and what dodgy restaurant does this or that or the other. People know that. I wonder if you can talk to how much it's known, but there's a whole lot of barriers to fear as to why nothing is done to address that.
Look, I'll speak very honestly about in Nambucca. It is, I think, publicly, it is not known. I think it's so new that it's an unknown thing.
Yeah.
But that would be, an honest response to that.
Yeah. And so it's come so quickly that, in a sense, the local intel hasn't.
Look, there are absolutely, as you say, I can't speak in a hearing like this about the information.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's a publicly known set of facts because it is something so recent in that valley.
That's helpful to know. Thank you. I don't know, Mr. Lang, if you have any
I'd
insight.
concur with that as well. That there's limited information and communication in that space.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Lang, Dr. Simpson referred to an expansion, I presume, of blueberry farming in Nambucca. Has there been an expansion of that sort around the Coffs Harbour?
I don't have that information with me. Yeah, I'd have to take that on notice.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Just a general one. What you're being exposed to and seeing firsthand is also being seen firsthand and being challenged in other parts of the state. And the same, dare I say, lessons of how to try and deal with it at the local level, and the kind of structures to establish, and the various matters that need to be taken into account, like language and all the rest of it, are there to be worked through as well. And it just seems to me that we must get to the stage, when I say we, and in some sense this is more of a statement than a question, but I'd like your views, that what we're learning from these other areas, and whilst I was not involved, that the chair and the committee were down there in the Riverina some months ago doing very good work, and had witnesses come in and give evidence which is sadly being reflected through witnesses and submissions to the mid-north coast and north coast. Do you get to hear, or through the grapevine, I know this is very informal, what is being done in other communities that are being challenged by these same terrible matters that are confronting us? And if so, how are you getting to find out that this is there? Now, if there's something formal doing this and communicating what's being done and being looked at, I'd like to know that. But I suspect that may not be the case, and it's more informal, that nevertheless you've picked up on things that are going on elsewhere in the state.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to answer to that. So, look, there have been programs which, I'm going to be very upfront, that through the New South Wales Anti-Slavery Commissioner's team and the work there, a lot of us are sort of becoming aware of each other. And because of that, and I'll reiterate, Nambucca Valley's new on this journey, but in the Riverina, also in Griffith, I know there's issues. I guess that's part of that area as well. So there are, I'm going to say, a collection of not only counsellors but other networks, migrant support networks. So that is starting to happen. Right. But I do believe that has happened not necessarily organically, but because of the other work done by that broader team.
Right.
I think this has been a really great initiative.
Yeah, I'd have to echo that sentiment about the Anti-Slavery Commission, and particularly the recent conference in Wollongong, where the sessions were constructed in a way that certainly the ones I was involved in, there was an extraordinary cross-fertilisation from different groups being brought together. So I think that's actually itself quite powerful when people previously working separately suddenly start finding that they've got common interests. There's also a mayoral alliance linked to the PALM scheme. I don't know if you've been involved in that, but I know the Mayor of Wagga and Leeton and I think Griffith have been involved in that, but it involves I don't know if Nambucca's been involved in that mayoral alliance around the PALM scheme.
Look, it's my intention to basically bring forward a notice of motion following, we've had the conference recently where we're up to, and it would absolutely be our intention to join that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just we've got to write a report at the end of this, and it'll be overseen and supervised by the chair, and coming out of that are normally some findings and recommendations. Particularly interested in your thoughts around what might be for us to consider, because obviously I can't speak for what the future's going to be. But you know, if you had an opportunity to make the strongest recommendation in a particular area of this whole vexed matter, what would you be proposing or suggesting the committee considers recommending?
Yeah.
Because the report goes back to government here in New South Wales for the relevant minister and ultimately the cabinet and the government to make a decision over. So.
Yeah, I think, look, I'll probably reiterate my 3 points. So the regulation of the labour hire, and I would stress New South Wales first, and that can follow with the national approach, because I think New South Wales approach will be quicker. At that local level, I do believe some form of information to us locally, whether it be to that migrant workers support network or the council itself, of who from the PALM scheme or other schemes is coming to town. I'm not sure how we achieve that, but that would be just amazing. And the other part, and this actually astounds me a little, I mentioned we've had frontline worker training of council, but that allows us to make observations within our local CBDs. We don't have any legislative ability to go and check what's happening on farms. Now, when I learn there's issues at accommodation on farms, some of which are not registered as accommodation or with amenities, all of that, what is our rights? Yeah, some sort of capability in that space. Once again, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the wording entails, but it's that accountability of framework to the grower right through to the industry.
And just with your eagle eye, Mr. Lang, being an officer of the council, does anything come to mind that you would put high up on the list of considerations for the committee in terms of possible recommendations?
I think certainly resourcing in the service capacity by the New South Wales government. This is not a space that I'm working in as yet.
No, sure.
In terms of strategy, but in terms of other strategies, just to allow us access to more information so that we could advocate locally for the services and to more clearly identify the gaps,
right,
and what role we could play as the closest level of government to the people.
Of course, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms McDonald, you'd like to...
Yes,
Mrs McDonald.
It's basically a follow-on. So in terms of you're not being provided information, what kind of information would you like to receive? Like, is it how many workers are coming or which farms they're going on? Because then you would be able to say, well, I know that farm, they don't have proper worker facilities or things like. What kind of information do you need, and where would you see it coming from, so that you can provide the services, or because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, no, that's right. The evidence is puts us in a stronger position to be able to argue for the resources that we don't necessarily have, but that other levels of government may have the capacity to provide. Yeah.
So would you see it would be coming from, say, the scheme itself, saying we've got people coming from this area and there are 20 of them, or like what specifics do you need in order to assist with service?
I just think we don't know what we don't know. Yeah.
Can I
Yes.
add? Sure. Can I add to that? I think any information would be better than what we're having now. That's my honest answer. So I honestly do believe that, as I mentioned before, Your Honour, that we have been told that it's a privacy issue, that we're not getting this information. But in terms of the health and well-being, the ethics, the cultural integration of everything that we've talked about today will be facilitated by this. So the more information, the better, and the more we can support the temporary migrant workers to our towns. Yeah.
Because you did mention the right to farm before, but not without human rights.
Absolutely.
So I get, if you want the information, you are wanting to help the farmers to say, okay, I respect your right to farm, but in order to do that, we don't want you to be exploit workers. So, what do you need in terms of worker accommodation, potable water, those kind of things? How can we help so that we've got a win-win rather than what we've currently got?
Yeah, so basic human rights. I actually think that's how simple it is.
Thank you. It's been very helpful. We might bring that session to a close. Thank you, Dr. Stimpson, and thank you, Mr. Lang. We'll excuse you. We may have some follow-up questions, supplementary questions, and I assume that you'll be able to provide us, you're agreeing to provide us information as you can with response to those. Thank you very much. And we'll excuse you, and we'll now have our next witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the great evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for coming to give evidence to us today. We've got Miss Pereira and Mrs. Sykes. Very good. Thank you, as I say, for coming to give evidence. We'll start by getting each of you to either make an oath or an affirmation. Could you just state your name, your position, and then make the oath or affirmation? And we'll start with you, Mrs. Sykes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I only just got into the country yesterday, from Samoa, so I'm all just being update with all this.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm
you fly the country just to come and see us?
I'm Malia Sykes. So me and Coco has been working with PICAs as volunteer just to care for their needs and stuff. As far as winter stuff and what their main needs while they're here in town. So that's our thing.
And you're with the Coffs Coast Multicultural Society?
Yes.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like we're the it of I'm doing all the running around and Coco's been helping me getting all the resources together to help our people while they're here.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you mind just swearing the oath or the affirmation?
Sure. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Pereira?
I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms. Pereira. Would either of you like to make a brief opening statement?
No.
No? Mrs. Sykes?
I guess this is about the pickers.
Yep.
And I am quite grateful for the opportunity to actually make a voice on their behalf, because it has been a few years, and with the little voice that we have, since the Tongan and Vanuatu has arrived in town before COVID.
That's all right. Just take your time.
Water?
There's water there if you want some water.
Just have a drink of water.
I have seen the unfairness that they have, the treatments of the accommodations that they have been living in. And sometimes I know that our people desperately need the money to support their families.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that they have to live like pigs to earn that money. I have seen through the rains for months that the Tongans has been living up at Aurora. The horrible conditions, the environments that they have to go into their rooms with their wet boots, the smell of it. I cannot imagine having to be sick through the rain and having to get out to go to the bathrooms through the wet, and then walk those months through their little accommodations that they have to live in. I have seen the condition that they were eating in. The outdoors with no, the open place, the barbecue area where they were cooking has no close-in stuff through the winters. It was cold, no heaters whatsoever. In the end, I bought, when the other Samoan people came, I bought the heaters and helped them to get all the necessary winter stuff so they can be warm outside at night while they're eating and doing devotions. I know that they're not perfect, but without them, I don't think we'll have fruits on our tables and vegetables. To be fair, there are still, after having spoken with managers and at one of the conferences that we had with Coles and Woolworths, they were able to improve the conditions of living with the workers. They were able to send the council to have a look at what it needs, see if it's legal, and being able to do the right thing for them. So there were air conditions and heaters being put in their rooms, fridges for their food in their cabins. But still, there's a lot more to be done, because some some of the agency that still brings the people without having the ones with Costa itself are still getting away with the living conditions that they put some of the workers in to this day. I know me and Coco have visited a few, and it's not a place that it's legal for any of the Australian people to live in. But they still have to leave. The people cannot complain, because if they complain, they'll be kicked out, or they won't be bringing back the next time they ask to come back when they go home. So a lot of them that have complained have actually not come back, including the Fijians. I don't know what it can be done with as far as the working conditions that they're in the farms, because I know that they have to reach a certain level in their capability. Like if they have work for plants, a certain amount of plants in a day, if they have done that last year, they expect it to be done this year. It's if it's 4,000 a day plants, that's the requirements that they have to be able to reach that level every single time that they're working. And for also, as far as with the girls and the women, and the men, the girls are being expected to work the same level as the men are working when pulling plants it's just the unfairness that goes on. If you live in Australia, you don't expect to be doing the same hardship work that is required from the Pacific Island people. They can get it. They have big men that are living in Australia that work in the farm, are not even required to work the same level as the Pacific Island people every single time. And to me, that it's really unfair. When they speak up about it, they just never bring it back. Some of the leaders that have been asked for fairness has not been heard, even though I know the supervisors and the farmers are wanting, they think that they're doing the right thing by them and stuff, but all we see is the unfairness, the expectations that there has to be some way, has to be fair. You know, before they have never reached 2,000 plants a day when there was only Australian people working, people that are living in Australia working. Now it's like 6,000 plants a day, and having to pull that by hands with the machines. It's just, and when the boys are helping the girls to do some of the work, to work as a team, they get told that they need to be doing their own job, but they're trying to do it together as a team, so that way they all benefit from the work. It's not that the women are slacking off, it's just they're not as strong as the men in pulling those roots out of the ground. So I guess that's where I am trying to help our people without having to complain, but there needs to be some fairness.
Thank you very much for that, Mrs. Sykes. I think we'd have some questions for you. I don't know if Ms. Pereira, you wanted to make any comment? No, thank you. Can I just clarify, Mr. Sykes, and thank you very much for that, and I'm sorry that's been distressing for you, but it's actually really powerful for us to hear you speak directly to us. Can I just clarify the area that you cover and visit? Is it just
to Grafton, Armidale?
To Grafton and
Armidale
from here?
Yep.
Okay. And the communities that you visit, I think you mentioned you've just come back from Samoa, but you mentioned other communities that you've got links to.
I go visit the Vanuatus, Fijians, Tongans, Solomons. When they were in town, we go and visit all of them.
Okay.
Just to make sure they have the warm clothes and things that they need. Yep.
And you did mention that you'd had discussions with Coles?
Yes, we had a conference in Kolsaba at the showgrounds where Coles and Woolworths supermarkets, and some of the lawyers and Australian Union were there. Australian Union was able to step in and be able to go and visit and actions and a lot of them.
When was that?
Oh, before COVID?
That was before.
Yeah.
Wasn't it
Just
this year?
No. Oh, that was different. But the ones that with the Tongans was before COVID.
We've had a few meetings.
We have a few meetings. We
Palm-
attended.
We have meetings with palm workers, legal aid.
New South Wales Council.
Yeah, we
for
have
New
quite a
South-
few.
multicultural. Yeah.
Okay. Do things happen as a result of those meetings? It sounds like you've had some meetings this year,
Yeah.
including with the federal departments responsible for the PALM scheme, or
Especially the multicultural group for New South
Yeah.
Wales have helped a lot, and the Australian Union.
Australian Workers Union.
Yeah.
Was that
Okay.
deal under the sun?
I have no idea. I just attend meetings when we get invited. Yeah.
So do you know who convenes the meetings?
Mostly those, the other ones that we had was through the Australian Council for New South Wales for Multicultural Group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was before COVID, you said?
Yeah. Before COVID was through the Australian Union.
Okay.
Invited us to the ones in town.
Okay.
Yeah. And they invited some of the workers to speak, but nobody did.
Except us.
So the Australian Council, you mean ACOS, Australian Council of Social Services?
For New South Wales, for Multicultural Group.
So the New South Wales Multicultural Council
Yeah.
convened the group.
Yeah.
And you spoke, but other people weren't happy to
The
speak.
Tongans wouldn't get up and speak.
Yeah.
Because they've been threatened. If they complain that they won't be brought back. So they asked us to come along and speak on their behalf.
Thank you.
Chair, can I?
Yes, by all means.
Yes, thank you so much for being here and for really giving us an insight into the situation. I think it's really telling that we've had a lot of evidence today, but no one having the courage to be as damning as you have been in terms of the current situation. So thank you
That's okay.
for sharing that. I think that the big issue is that all of the situations and the details that you describe are not actually legal, that people cannot be treated like this, that is unacceptable. So the issue is where is the power imbalance to me that mean that people can't exercise their rights?
Yeah.
And indeed, where the pressure is coming from people to not feel comfortable to speak up about this. You talked about the risks that if you complain, then you don't get to return.
Yeah.
There's two ways that you can deal with an unsafe workplace or an unsafe living conditions. One is that the individual that is suffering has to take an individual complaint. Another is there is proper oversight and regulation that means that those individuals don't need to complain, that indeed, the relevant authorities are aware that this is happening and then they take action, right?
Yeah.
Do you see any of that monitoring of the living conditions, of the work health and safety, of any of these things happening from any of the agencies or any of the groups? Or is the only time anything is raised where it's raised by the individual as a complaint and then there are repercussions?
I know for sure that Costa has always bring their people, and as far as I can see, they're really good at looking after the workers. But the on-site working expectation is different than from my point of view. The laboring side of things is different. As far as the other agency, I know that one in particular who hasn't been very nice, because one of the teams that was here from Samoa, it was given just 3 days to pack up and leave. And as far as Costa was, when I called Costa, they said they're still expecting to come back on Monday.
Right.
But they were asked to leave on Friday. With that, they only just arrived. And because of some disagreements and with the agency asked them that they have to leave. I found out later from the multicultural group of New South Wales that everybody has the right, like we do in Australia, to be given 2 weeks' notice and stuff. So I was too late on knowing that, that part of it. Otherwise, those kids would not have left Australia. But they were up and leave. So I ran around buying some things for their families, especially the ones with children, little kids. So I went and buy stuff shopping and delivered to them before their bus left. So that I don't know where that is up to as far as them coming back, but that was like the worst case scenario of mistreatments of how they, from one of the agency that I'm not going to name right now, they have been really badly in looking after the workers here. One of the houses where they are right now is a rundown house with a toilet that should be taken down that's not working in front of it. It's an outside toilet, and it's still to this day, it's still there. And I have asked the union to have a look into it. But there's also so much that they can do if you're not a member of the union associations. And a lot of, also in that case with union members, a lot of them are scared, the workers are scared to become union member because it goes against their record. Yeah, so I've seen that fear in the people in that way as well, in their had trying to make a better living for themselves, but also they can't really utilize the resource that's in front of them. So we have been telling them about their rights now, empowering them that, you know, you do have rights. We have the same rights as me living in Australia. You have the same rights. So that's one of the things that we now have. And there is a number that they can call for help, that it can remain anonymous. But again, to them, they don't really trust that it will, their
Can I add
will remain
that it's not just the workers themselves that are threatened by the employers, it's their families that they won't be employed and brought back, but it's the village as well. So it's not just them, but their family and village. So that's
the village
a
in
big
their
threat.
country.
Yes,
Yeah,
because we all come from villages.
Yes,
and
Ms. Pereira,
so
can you
they
explain
get threatened.
Can you explain, just so it's really clear in terms of that process, can you explain how that communication, so because a worker complains, then they are sent back?
Yes.
And then the punishment on
Goes-
that whole
yes.
community will be that they won't be invited
None
to
of
come
them
back
will
next
be invited
time.
to come over.
Yeah, for 2 years.
So it's not just them. It impacts their family as well.
If they misbehave, it impacts the family and the community.
And
that
then
they
the
come from.
impact on that in terms of the financial stability or
Yeah.
income of the village
The
would be
village,
significant,
yeah.
I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the guy or the lady that has been the main person to isolate the village from that opportunity will get punished in the village.
Yes.
They either disowned or they get fined a whole lot of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for providing that information.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Kane now.
Thank you so much for being here today and for the work that you do. I have a follow-up question. You were just talking about like some growers are better, so you named one who you said tries to do the right thing. When they're what happens from the agencies that you've just described in terms of retribution and in terms of punish. When is that known, or how? What do the growers do when they find out about that? Do they do anything? No. Okay, so they don't.
They said it's up to the agents. It's the agents who're supposed to, they're the one who brought the people.
So for the example that you gave about people who were told to leave in 3 days, but the grower was expecting them to turn up. So the grower just went...
Yeah.
Well,
there's nothing they can do.
I asked the rep that works for Grant Owen's company if they would take the workers that had been let go by Maydic, and they said yes. And then Maydic sent them home before they could be taken on by the Owen specific company.
So, but there's been no example you can think of where growers have said that agency treated people so badly, we're not going to use them anymore?
No. I guess it's as long as they provide the workers, the workers for them. Normally here in Coffs Harbour, I know Maydic has, Costa has dealt directly with their workers, so none of the other things can happen, but there's still a little things that slip through. One of the concerns was the rent, the price they pay for rent and petrol. So you can pay anything from $170 up for accommodations for 6+ people in one room. My thing is that how come you have so much people in one room paying the rents that you can actually pay rent for a house? For that's just small room. Is there a way that you can actually negotiate the pay to be a lot less or less people in one room? I know a lot of them has to do that to pack more people in, to have more workers, but also they have to have breathing space or place where they can put their belongings, because they were sleeping, a lot of them were sleeping with their suitcases on top of their beds, because I said, how can you stretch out there's nowhere to put their suitcases. They have to have it on the bed. And that's how they live for like 6-7 months. That's the same in here. Thankfully, the managers of the places have listened and let us. Sometimes we buy the boxes, the plastic containers for them to store things underneath their bed that can fit under the bed, or to store their food, so that way they have a place for their food to put in and be able to. We have supplies, anything from cups and forks and knives, kitchenwares, so it can help the houses, the managers, because sometimes they take the stuff to the farm and leave it there. So we're being able to provide a lot of the kitchenwares to help the managers of some of the accommodations to be able to have their own stuff. So some of the rules now is that if you lose, they provide the boxes of cutleries and things that you used, and if they end of their term is not back in the boxes, they either refill it or pay a certain amount of money for the belongings. So we often help the kids refill their boxes and being able to help them so they can save as much money to take home with them. Things like that. But for us, it's not about what we do. It's just the joy of seeing them, being able to help him and save as much money for their loved ones, and be able to see them enjoy the life that they have here, besides having to work, We've been able to, for teams that are cooking together, we've been able to provide gas stoves, and walks, because that's something they don't provide for a team that works together. So we have garage. Our garage is full of things for the workers. We're not complaining about that at all. We just want to see the fairness in their living condition and working conditions to be fair for both.
Just for example, there's a man who is accommodating 40 workers at a time on his property just outside of Grafton, but he's put up containers for some of the workers to live in. So he has 40 workers on the property with his house, containers that he's put the workers in, and he's got one small kitchen for 40 workers. So
shipping containers.
Yeah, shipping containers with a window and a doorway, and he's put them in there and the house, but he's only got one kitchen. So Malia's gone out and bought gas cookers for them, and we've taken them out there so that they can actually cook more than a few meals at a time for 40 workers.
Can I just clarify, in that case, are people paying what
The
level
same
of
rate,
rent?
$175 each for living there. So, you know.
And the toilet facilities in that situation?
Same.
They share bathrooms
Yeah.
and toilets outside.
We can't provide any toilets.
No,
I'm
no.
afraid.
I just wonder again, the growers employ 40 workers. Presumably these workers are with the same agency.
Yeah.
Are we suggesting that the growers don't know where these workers are living?
No, they do know.
Yeah.
Because their supervisors or healthcare workers they go there and visit them and organise them for work and stuff and welcoming.
So they go to the
the
site,
inductions. They do.
Yeah.
They attend the site, but mainly they said if agency are the ones that brings them, it's the agency that's their responsibilities, looking after their workers. So it depends on who brings their workers and the conditions that they live in. I know one of the accommodations that was being put the people through during the incident that happened at Korora, one of the agency had moved a whole lot of the group into it's a pub that was closed down for health safety. It's not supposed to be operating, but they use it they put the people in there. When you walk in it, you can actually, if you're not careful, your foot could go through the floor. And it was closed down for Woolgoolga. It's all along the river because it was being flooded through a few times. Nobody's supposed to live in it. But this agency had put a whole lot of workers in there, and it have really small kitchens. They cook. Sometimes they don't sleep until midnight or after midnight because they have to take turn, and then they have to wake up at 4 o'clock to get ready to come back to work in. It's like nearly an hour drive to where the Costas, the blueberry farm is. So some of the times they cook, they all have to take turn to be able to have their meal done. That accommodation is still being used to this day for people to go there. And then they use the workers, they pay the workers to actually clean, some of the workers to clean that accommodation. I can get the address. That they're still living there. And one of the accommodations that people have asked, it's accommodations, one of the farmers, they have holes through the walls and stuff, windows that patch up with cardboard boxes and stuff, and through winter it's just so freezing cold. I have given heaters at times or hot water bottles for the girls to actually use. And there's nothing we can do to actually move them on to another accommodation. I have asked the union, and the union have gone and visit and stuff. And again, if one of them are not a member, we've encouraged them at least have one of you guys to be a member, because they can act on that one person to better your accommodations. So that's the best advice we have been given to them. But mostly we're trying to cater to what they need for some of the accommodation.
Sorry, what about the Office of the Commissioner of Modern Slavery? Do you report these to them?
We have, we just finally make connections with them, and we have talked with the Commissioner and the team, so they have been informed, and we worked with them as well at the moment. Yeah,
Chair,
and the Red Cross. Yeah.
Thank you. Chair, if I can just ask one, just because I think one of the things that I'm really curious about is, and I guess to Dr. Kane's point, is that the growers and the farmers, the people that are engaging in this work, are part of the same communities that you're part of.
Yeah.
That know that this is occurring.
Yeah.
Is it known in the community that people are living in these completely, not in the islander communities, in the worker communities? Obviously, they know the substandard conditions that they're living in.
Yeah.
But in the broader community, in the broader community, people are aware of this state of the living conditions and are still engaging with these labour hire firms.
The people in Arrawarra knew that the caravan park in Arrawarra, what they were doing wasn't legal.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot that they can do about it except complain.
But so it's common knowledge that this is all happening in these communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess I wanted to give you the opportunity because I think that the broader inequity in the concept of a migrant worker scheme is that we know that the Australian dollar is worth a lot in other countries, right? And so despite all of these horrific and illegal workplace exploitations and substandard living conditions, we know that there are bigger influences driving this. I wonder, do you have thoughts and reflections on the impact that it has on these communities and these workers to feel stuck in this place between needing to earn money to take back and not complain about a scheme like this and schemes like this versus the trauma? Does everyone know back home before you do this how bad the situation is?
No.
Or it's kept completely quiet so that people don't. I'm interested to hear this dynamic because I think there are broader powers here.
Well, a lot of the families now have got the idea, because before they thinking that their families were coming, they were just saying that there's no money. Because there was a point where they were here for months on ends and there was not enough working hours. So a lot of them were working like 2-3 hours a day. And they still had their rent being cut, their their airfares, their visa, all those things were still cut from probably 10 hours a week the most. The team that was in Tasmania said that it was so cold that they weren't working not even 10 hours a day. But the family back home thought that they were joking, like, how can you not send money? They said, we don't even have enough to eat off. And the families, so a lot of the times, for me going back to Samoa now, is explaining to them, like, life is not fairy tale. Just because, and a lot of the kids have gone back and go, I'm not going back to the work. They refused.
Yes.
A lot of them have refused to come back. They've come and realized that the work is harder than them having to go plant a taro or a banana or a coconut to go sell at the market for $20. Because they came here and go, it's not worth for me all the hard work and the stress.
Yeah.
Or a lot of, one of the teams, they were taken home. 2 of them were there when I was there that was killed in the car accident in Sydney. So me and my husband were able to attend the funeral when it was arrived, and having to see that and people not realize the magnitude of the hardship that the people face here.
Yeah.
And not just here, also in New Zealand and other places. And I have to explain to them, it's not all fairy tale.
Yeah.
That money got sent to you on their sweat and early hours of the morning, and having to leave and share accommodations with other people. The smell of their rooms is horrendous. I said, you guys need to really think. One of the Miss Samoa last year, was in one of the lady that was in the competitions actually spoke about, because she was part of the workers, she actually spoke about the conditions and the hardship that the people don't realize, that it is not all fairy tales.
Absolutely.
The money that they work so hard to bring home, to put a roof over their head and food on their table, or help with their whalalave as a family, things like weddings and funerals and stuff. It comes out of hardship.
Yeah.
And I have to explain it to them, it's really hard to be able to get the money that you're receiving. Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Sykes. Now, I'm just conscious that we're running over time, but I do think it's important to extend it. So I'm going to let Mrs. McDonald ask a question, and then yourself, Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I just wondered what would make the scheme fair and equitable for the workers that are coming from the islands, because obviously they would like the money to send back to the families, but we don't want them working in these conditions. What needs to change, and how can we bring about that change?
I think, to me, it's very simple. It's the fairness of it. Make it fair, make it clean, having proper clean conditions for the workers. I mean, I said to them, you can't even have an Australian person living like this or pay this much money for a whole lot of people. And you're complaining that when the workers is actually complaining. You need to be fair. You need to provide proper, clean environments. The health side of it, I know that when the health side of it, they were taking, before I found out, they were taking for a headache or a little cut. They were taking the workers to the emergency for treatments that cost them like $900. Anything between $6 and $9 for the emergency visit. And I was like, why would you pay that? And it comes out of there. Yeah. So I end up saying to their supervisor, I say, would you please stop doing that, because you can book a doctor, GP, for $100 to take them to see about their boils, or buy the Band-Aid or the boil cream to put on their sore, instead of you're wasting their week's earning to cut. And I said, what's the point of, where's the health check? Their health insurance. It doesn't even, they said it doesn't cover. So if the agency or the company covers that, the people still have to pay that money back. So that's the other thing. Even for one of the guy had a heart condition, he still has to pay all that money back. So the health side as well is one of the things that it's really important, that if something happened to them here, how are they going to be able to cover themselves if the insurance that they pay for doesn't cover for their health? And yeah, it's just, I think that's all I ask, is their living condition to be improved, to be clean, and make sure that to hold the agency accountable for their, for where they put the people.
Thanks, Mrs. Sykes. Mr. Donnelly.
I've got a question. It's in 4 parts, so I'll try and get through quickly the parts. In terms of the evidence, talked about the 2,000 plants per day. This was mentioned in your opening statement. and that's up to now 6,000 plants a day. What does that mean? What does the plants, what are they doing?
Planting it.
So they're actual planting blueberry?
Yeah.
That's fine, thank you. Just to be clear...
Not just blueberries, there's raspberries,
Oh,
there's
thank you.
other berries, yeah.
The word Costa, that's the name of a company, is it? Forgive me if I... Yes.
Yeah.
And that's spelt C...
Coasta, I think.
Thank you.
No, COSTCA.
Yes. Maydec, the word Maydec, that's a company, is it?
That's one of the employers.
Yes.
Agency.
An agency, yes. Which takes me quickly to my next question. With respect to agencies like Maydec, who do you think might know about more than just Maydec, but about the various agents? Because there's obviously, when I say obviously, I expect there's more than Maydec, there's probably a number. Someone must have some knowledge about who these different agents are. Who might hold that information?
The palms.
The palms.
The palm.
So all that information is retained, obviously. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's the palm scheme, right?
No,
They're
no,
the one
that's
with
fine. No,
regular-
I thought that may be the case.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Donnelly. I think, thank you. We've gone a bit over there, but it was very important that we do so. And I want to thank you both very much for that evidence. As Ms. Leong has said, it was very important evidence for us to have. And thank you for having the courage to come here and speak to us about it. So thank you very much, Mrs. Sykes.
Thank you
and
for the
also
opportunity.
Ms. Pereira, thank you. We'll excuse you. I think there may be some supplementary questions, and we'll follow up with those with you, and I hope you'll be happy to answer those if necessary. And we'll excuse you at this point. That brings to a close the public hearings today. So I want to thank all the witnesses and acknowledge the work of the Secretariat and staff here in Hansard, and that will be the close of the session. Wish everyone good day. Thank you.